Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and we are live streaming on YouTube today. This is October 27th. I will also release this on all my channels. Please subscribe to all those channels. I have YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. In addition, you can follow me on X and on GETTR. You can also follow me on Patreon and Substack. So please help support the work that I do by sharing the links, asking your social media to follow me, and making sure you subscribe to all the channels. I greatly appreciate it. I go over a lot of different topics. So please subscribe to be abreast to my content. In addition, if you like the work that I do and you want to support, you can support many different ways. Share the links. You can be a paid member to my Substack or Patreon channel. You can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. There's many ways to help support the work. I also have great products. I have ebooks, supplements, and also course material on immunology and pulmonology. So please help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free. I don't put stuff behind a paywall. So please help support the work and get the great products and follow my advice on how to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. Let's talk about a few of those products right now before we go to the market. The market has opened up, and I'll give you my take on that. Please go to my store and get the cleanse. This is 30 parts per million, or the max 35, which is 35 parts per million. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20-30 seconds, and then swallow it. What this will do is help to boost up your immune system. It will help to improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, help to increase that mucosal lining, and help the health of the epithelial cells that are in the oral pharynx. This is really important to do every day to slow down the aging process. This is a protocol that I've been developing. I've been doing this for over 5 years. So please take this every day, teaspoon a day, especially during the fall and the winter. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day. It's very easy, and just do it every day and boost up that immune system. In addition, go to my store and get the lozenges and the drops. These are really important to take during the fall and the winter season. You can get it in elderberry zinc, and you can also get the drops in 3 different flavors. You can get it in honey and lemon, blueberry, and also in cherry. So get a few bags for your household, get the lozenges and drops, take them right away the moment you have that throat irritation, especially during the fall and the winter season. Have some at work, have some at home. You never know when you need it, but take it right away to mitigate the issue, especially during this fall and winter. So use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. That's all caps, discount 5, and $5 off any order. All right, with that said, let's drop into Bloomberg. But before we do that, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,850. I still have a year-end target of 6,800 to 7,000. So just pay attention to this range. There might be, near a year end to try to break the 7,000 barrier. But right now we have a resistance level at 6,900, and we have a support level at 6,750. It's trading at 6,850, but my year-end target is 6,800 to about 7,000. And we'll tighten that up as we move into December.
Hi from Bloomberg Tech. This is Open Interest.
Okay, they're on commercial break. While they're on commercial break, let's go to some more other news here. Let's listen into Mark Levin. This was published, I think it was last night.
Build a website you love with Wix. Or your words Create your brand.
Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Sunday. Thanks for watching. Before I get to my opening, which I think is very important, on this issue of tariffs, we're going to have a single guest tonight. I told you we'll do this from time to time. I think it's important, these long-form interviews. And we're going to look into, substantively, the Democrat Party, not at a superficial level. And I have the great guest for the entire hour, Julian Epstein. I've known Julian Epstein for years. He's former House Judiciary Committee Democrat Chief Counsel. He's a Democrat consultant, and he's about had it with the Democrat Party. But before I get to Julian, I want to talk about tariffs. I want to circle back. I touched on this maybe a year ago, 8 months ago, on this issue of tariffs and so forth, because I think there's a lot of confusion. I think we have a decision by the International Trade Court that is way offline, despite what some of these so-called experts said. This case will be in front of the Supreme Court in a matter of weeks. And I don't know the outcome, nobody does, but I want to get into this. As Thomson Reuters pointed out, in the early years of the American Republic, tariffs were the country's primary source of revenue. But the tariff of 1789, one of the first laws passed by the new federal government, was as much about protection as it was about raising money. The tariff imposed duties on a wide range of imported goods and helped to pay down the young nation's war debt. So right from the beginning, tariffs were critical for so many reasons. And we've had tariffs from then until today. Different types of tariffs, different extent of tariffs. We have promoted free market economics. We believe in free market economics. But tariffs have, in fact, played a significant role throughout our country, Republican, Democrat, the founders, President Trump. Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury, was a vocal proponent of using tariffs to protect and nurture American industries. In fact, he believed that without such protections, the U.S. would remain dependent on British and European goods and would not develop its own manufacturing base. Today, the President of the United States has been very concerned about the hollowing out of our industries and our manufacturing base. He sees what China's up to. China's no friend. He sees what other countries are up to, and he's trying to give a rebirth to the industrial might of the United States, to build on what's here, so much of which has been exported to other countries. In the 1800s, tariffs were a key part of the process of industrialization in the United States. The post-war Civil War years saw a surge in industrial growth, particularly in the steel industry. A lot of us call this the second great industrial revolution, which really was the first great industrial revolution, 1870 to 1913. During that period, a lot was going on, including the imposition of tariffs to give the country time to grow and to develop its own industries. Tariffs protected the American steel industry from cheaper European steel, allowing it to grow and prosper. And this protection was key in building a domestic steel industry that could compete with and eventually surpass European powers. The expansion of railroads, which were heavily supported by tariffs, was another transformative force in the American economy. The construction of railroads required vast amounts of steel, which the protected American steel industry could supply. This symbiotic relationship between tariffs, the steel industry, and the railroad expansion not only changed the physical geography of the country, but also facilitated the movement of goods and people. Well, it massively changed the country, expanded our boundaries, expanded our industrial base, and from steel and railroads through other industries, other businesses, and from there, you know. The McKinley Tariff, that is the McKinley Tariff Act of 1890, named after its sponsor and future president, William McKinley, raised tariffs on many imported goods to their highest levels up to that point. The average tariff rate on dutable items increased from about 38% to 49%. The McKinley Tariff Act also included reciprocity provisions that allowed the government to negotiate trade agreements with other countries. These provisions were designed to reduce tariffs on certain goods in exchange for similar reductions by other nations, promoting more balanced trade relations. Now, even today, other nations have tariffs, and they have big tariffs. You got to wonder why. If they're not useful, if they're regressive, then why do they do it? We've had a lot of tariffs.
We're not here to follow the old rules of money. We're here to write the new ones. And when you
We've had a lot of tariffs. As a matter of fact, I want you to look at this graph as I discuss this and as we scroll through. How many tariff acts and trade acts have we had? 1789, 1790, 1791, 1792. different tariff acts. 1816, 1824, 1828, 1832, 1833, 1842, 1846, 1857, 1861, 1872. Tariffs. 1875, 1883, 1890, the McKinley tariff. 1894, 1897, 1909, 1913, 1921, 1922, 1930, 1934. Why am I reading them when you can see them on the screen? Just to show you, to emphasize how often we use tariffs. 1947, 1962, 1974, 1979, 1984, 1988, 1994, 2002, 2009, 2018, 2025. Look, you don't have to love tariffs. You might not even love tariffs. I'm going through the history of this country, the greatest economy on the face of the earth, the biggest superpower on the face of the earth. I'm explaining it. Again, I would argue that tariffs aren't what built this country. Capitalism is what built this country. But tariffs were used by presidents of every party in every period of American history to try and give a breather to allow our industries to develop, because other countries, in many respects, were taking advantage of our country, as Donald Trump talks about all the time. Let's talk a little about the law and the Constitution. In dozens of statutes, Congress has authorized the president, as you heard, to adjust tariff rates in response to specific trade-related concerns related to U.S. foreign policy and national security interests, or that required administrative finding by a U.S. agency. For example, Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 empowers the president to adjust tariffs on imports that threaten to impair U.S. national security. Section 5B of the Trading with the Enemy Act and Section 203 of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act empower the president in a time of war or national emergency to regulate imports. Section 201 of the Trade Act of 1974 empowers the president to raise tariff rates temporarily when the U.S. International Trade Commission determines that a sudden import surge has caused or threatened serious injury to U.S. industries. Congress has also empowered U.S. agencies to impose duties to offset certain injurious trade practices. Does the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, this is the crucial act right now that's being fought over in the Supreme Court, empower a president to impose or modify tariffs on other countries? The act's language is very broad. A president is authorized to, quote, deal with any unusual and extraordinary threat which has its source in whole or substantial part outside the United States to the national security, foreign policy, or economy of the United States if the president declares a national emergency with respect to such threats. The act goes further, authorizing a president to, quote, regulate importation. The Supreme Court has said courts should not second-guess a president's decision to trigger a determination of an emergency authority. And I would add, there is nothing that stops the president from dealing with balance of payment issues under the 1977 Act, in addition to national security issues, despite what the International Trade Court ruled, because I read the act myself. Now, what else? Non-delegation doctrine. That is, Congress cannot delegate its core functions to the executive branch on separation of powers grounds. I would argue Congress is doing no such thing. The president, under Article 2, is in charge of foreign policy. That includes trade. In 1934, Congress passed the Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act, which gave President Franklin Roosevelt the ability to change tariff rates by 50% and negotiate bilateral trade agreements without additional approval from Congress. Why? Well, you look at Congress right now. The Democrats closed the government. The Republicans have very small majorities. The framers understood this. This is why national security and foreign policy issues, the president is commander-in-chief, with some input from Congress, no question. But quick decisions, emergency decisions, fundamental decisions, you have an executive branch. Congress still has the power to pass legislation, has the power to budget, to withhold monies for certain acts by the executive branch, but sometimes decisions have to be made. So to me, there was no non-delegation issue, this 1934 Act, or to the Supreme Court. On August 15, 1971, President Nixon issued Proclamation 4074, in which he declared a national emergency and imposed a 10% ad valorem supplemental duty on all dutiable articles imported into the United States, all of them. The United States Court of Customs and Patent Appeals, which is the predecessor to this International Trade Court, held in United States versus Yoshida International, that Nixon had such power under the Trading with the Enemy Act. The point is, there was no non-delegation issue.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform.
Non-delegation issue, no separation of powers issue. The Trade Act of 1974 gave additional powers to the president to negotiate tariffs and non-tariff barriers without congressional approval unless an agreement contains non-tariff barriers. Again, I'm focused here on the non-delegation issue. That was found to be a non-delegation non-issue. In other words, not a separation of powers issue. The Congress was not conferring to the president its core powers. Now, surely the Supreme Court justices, some of whom no doubt watch this show, will understand that Congress is not without power of its own. It can change the law. It can withhold funding. There's things Congress can do. Rather than an issue of non-delegation, I see this as a question under the political matter doctrine, where the two elected branches of government duke it out, thereby reversing these lower court interventions. In other words, Supreme Court, in my humble opinion, you should reverse these lower court decisions, tell the lower court under the political matters doctrine that they should not get involved, that if Congress feels that certain of its powers are being seized by the executive branch, Congress has the power to seize them back, the give and play. Otherwise, all kinds of presidential determinations will be subject to not only judicial review, but judicial tyranny, which we see right now in the lower courts, where a handful of unelected judges who do not have access to the kind of information necessary to make decisions about foreign policy, national security, international trade. These judges have like 2 or 3 clerks. They don't have the capacity to make these decisions, let alone they don't have the constitutional authority to substitute their decisions for that of a president. They will be interposing themselves into fundamental decisions that Constitution's framers left to the president. And if people think the president doesn't have that authority, then Congress can try and act as well. That said, Congress can act if doing so violates the president's Article 2 powers with respect to foreign policy and national emergencies, which would be a violation of separation of powers too. So these two elected branches duke it out, and we'll see where it goes. But there's really no reason for the courts to intervene just because you have plaintiffs in industries who are complaining. There are big issues here. And if the court gets it wrong, we're now going to have a phalanx of radical activist federal district judges and Article 3 judges making decisions that they have no authority to make and no knowledge base to make.
The Synchrony Premier World MasterCard. Earn 2% cash back on every purchase, every category, with no
Knowledge base to make. Now, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was a great president. The economy exploded under Ronald Reagan. It grew by 25%. His tax cuts were massive. Donald Trump has Ronald Reagan's portrait hanging in the Oval Office, and not just hanging somewhere, over his left shoulder. 2 tremendous great presidents. And what did Ronald Reagan do? You know, the Cato Institute is a fairly libertarian organization, maybe extremely libertarian. They weren't happy with Ronald Reagan in 1988. He put out a policy analysis called Cato Institute Policy Analysis number 107. The Reagan record on trade, rhetoric versus reality, was written by Sheldon Richman. And to cut to the chase here, what did old Sheldon have to say? A 100% tariff was placed on selected Japanese electronic products. The health and vitality of the U.S. semiconductor industry are essential to America's future competitiveness, said Reagan. We cannot allow it to be jeopardized by unfair trading practices. One of the many ways Reagan embraced trade restrictions was through the imposition of a special 45% tariff over a 5-year period on top of a regular 5% duty on Japanese heavy motorcycles as a favor to Harley-Davidson. Harley-Davidson was going under. Again, he felt they needed a temporary period of time to survive because the Japanese were flooding our market with their motorcycles. Reagan stepped in with tariffs. In testimony before the Senate Finance Committee on July 17, 1987, GETTR, who was the trade representative, called Section 201 of the trade law, which permits the president to grant industries relief from imports even without an allegation of unfair trade practices, even without an allegation, an important cornerstone of U.S. trade law that should be used vigorously in appropriate cases. And it was by the Reagan administration. They bragged about it. What else did they say? They said for the—
Let me just pause here really quick and just interject. It's really important to realize a few things here in dealing with the tariffs. The first is that through tariffs, we can use it as a negotiating leverage to get manufacturing coming back to the United States. Either American companies building and competing against foreign companies, or those foreign companies coming here to manufacture. Or better yet, you have multinationals that are domiciled in the United States. They're doing manufacturing overseas and having them come back and do domestic manufacturing. So it's a negotiating leverage. Another point that's important to understand is that for government revenues, the main sources are, or let's say not revenues, cash flows. Let's use cash flows as a better term. Tariffs can be used as a cash flow for the coffers for the government, because you have these import duties that are exercised and tariff money will come in. Another is taxes, taxation. And another cash flow is the issuance of debt. Now, when you're an American citizen, you may have to pay more for a product if it's tariffed. Sometimes not. It just depends. You don't absorb 100% of the tariff in most cases. And sometimes you don't absorb any of the tariff. Just depends on if the end seller can increase the price. If you have a lot of competitors that aren't raising their price, then that individual, that company that wants to raise their prices can't, even if they've been tariffed. So it just depends on the actual market and what sort of commodity you're looking at. So if you're an American citizen, you could be tariffed. You may have to pay an increase in goods. You may be taxed, and there may be issuance of debt, and your taxes will eventually have to pay that issued debt. Issuing debt, which is the primary way that the government funds its operations, is pernicious, because that debt is issued for sometimes 7 years, 10 years, 30 years, 20 years, depends on what debt that has been issued. And there's a coupon payment. There's an interest payment on that debt for 20 years. Now, would you, as a consumer, prefer to decide if you want to buy a product or not, and to pay that tariff or not, versus having to pay interest on a 20-year debt issuance? The consumer is better off just absorbing the tariff than issuing more debt. The bondholders benefit more with the issuance of debt. So the consumer, or the American citizen, is more enslaved when there's an issuance of debt, because of this pernicious. It lasts for a long time, and it can erode the confidence of the markets, could cause inflation. So the transnational capitalists, they benefit. They benefit with labor arbitrage to sell goods at a higher margin if they don't get tariffed. And the bondholders benefit more if there's debt issuance versus tariffs. So it really depends on who you're looking at and who benefits. Tariffs will benefit the end consumer better or more efficiently than the issuance of debt or the issuance of more taxes. The ones that benefit the most, that are bondholders or transnational capitalists, is a low tariff barrier and an issuance of debt. Now, if you have taxes on corporation, higher taxes on corporate, they don't like that. So they want lower taxes, lower tariffs. They sometimes in their rhetoric mix tariffs and taxes as the same thing. And they prefer the issuance of debt. And as the economy falters, then the Federal Reserve has to keep on printing money. You ever listen to a equity manager, fund manager, and what are they saying? They always keep on saying Federal Reserve has to lower the rate. Well, that means printing money. And the reason why is that inflation erodes your purchasing power, but it also grows assets at a faster rate. So home prices grow faster. Stock market grow faster as the Federal Reserve prints money, even though your purchasing power has eroded. It's not one for one, because the market trades in multiples. 15 times earnings, 25 times earnings. And this is the reason why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So if you look at the whole totality of society, and you're given the option, tariffs, taxes, or bond issuance, having tariffs is better for the end user, the middle class, the plebs.
Unfair trade practices have been formally investigated on the administration's own motion, resolved in most cases, and retaliated against when necessary. They said a record number of market opening settlements of unfair trade cases has resulted from unprecedented use of presidential unfairness determinations and threats of retaliation, while counter-retaliation by foreign government has been minimized. They said textile import quotas have been negotiated or imposed in record numbers with unprecedented degrees of restraint. They were bragging about this. They said of the recommendations presented to the president under Section 201 of the Trade Act, 2/3 have resulted in import relief, far higher than the record of prior administrations. They said rigorous enforcement of anti-dumping and countervailing duty laws, strongly supported by the president, has resulted in a record number of orders for offsetting duties. To emphasize the point, this letter that they sent to Congress, bragging about their acts, we find it deeply ironic that Congress would respond to this unprecedented use of presidential discretion by restricting the discretion of future presidents. We cannot accept the premise that the test of a tough trade bill.
I think if you're not using the van to do business travel, then you're missing out. My name's Clay, and I'm chief of staff for the go-to-market office. The van is
that the test of a tough trade bill is the extent to which it removes presidential discretion. The opposite is true, said Reagan. They forced Japan to accept restraints on auto exports. They tightened up considerably the quotas on imported sugar, negotiated to increase restrictiveness of the multi-fiber agreement, and extended restrictions to previously unrestricted textiles. The Reagan administration unilaterally changed the rules of origin in order to restrict textile and apparel products and so forth and so on, much more than that. And they put pressure on Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, the largest exporters of textiles and apparel to the United States, to limit their exports to the United States. They required 18 countries, including Brazil, Spain, South Korea, Japan, Mexico, and on and on and on, to reduce steel imports, guaranteeing domestic producers a share of the American market. When 3 countries not included in the 18, Canada, Sweden, and Taiwan, increased their exports, the administration demanded talks to check the increase. It imposed tariffs and quotas on their specialty steel. It imposed a 5-year duty beginning at 45% on Japanese motorcycles, raised tariffs on Canadian lumber and cedar shingle, forced the Japanese into an agreement to control the price of computer memory chip exports and increase Japanese purchases of American-made chips. What else? Pressed Japan to force its automakers to buy more American-made auto parts. Demanded that Taiwan, West Germany, Japan, and Switzerland restrain their exports of machine tools, with some market shares rolled back to 1981 level. Accused the Japanese of dumping roller bearings because the price didn't rise to cover a fall in the value of the yen. The U.S. Customs Service was ordered to collect duties equal to the so-called dumping margins. Redefine dumping in order to make it easier to bring charges of unfair trade practices. And I can go on, but I won't. And the Reagan administration was one of the most free trade administrations in American history, as is the Trump administration, even with the tariffs. Even with the tariffs. I could go on, but I won't. Maybe another day.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to
So when someone says that tariffs are bad for the end user, you need to really dive into the details. And almost always, the end user, the plebs, the labor of society, you're better off taking a tariff than it is to have higher taxes or debt issuance. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator Barley. Gladiator Barley will help to build muscle, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase, and detoxify your body. When you detoxify your body and bring down inflammation, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system and your brain function, even your cardiovascular system. Super important. And that's how you slow down the aging process and you build muscle. So do some resistance training and take the Gladiator Barley. This is a powder. You take it every day. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with just milk. But do some resistance training throughout the week. Take this daily, and you're going to slow down the aging process and build muscle. In addition, go to my store and get the Zeolite. Zeolite will help to detoxify your body. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue. Drink filtered water. This will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals, and you'll be able to urinate them out within about 6 to 8 hours. Do this daily. Make sure you take 3 small drops and drink some water. Now, by doing this regularly, what you're doing is you're detoxifying your body, and as your body is flushing these heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals out, your immune system and your endocrine system is going to be improved. In addition, your other organ systems will improve. Your liver, your kidneys, and even your brain function. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Zeolite, and detoxify your body every day. Now, for ones that want to do a heavier detox, you can take 10 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, do that every day until the bottle is done, and do that once or twice a year. But it is better to do a maintenance dose throughout the whole year every day. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Zeolite. Make sure you use discount 5 and get $5 off any order. All right, I want to listen into what's going on with China's deep deflation.
I wear how ridiculous. 3 childhood friends.
President Trump emphasized that he'll have the final say on trade negotiations and all of this. Watch.
I don't want to tell you what the understanding is, because what we understood yesterday or 2 days ago or even today is not going to be necessarily what it's going to be in 2 days. We're going to have a great talk. I have a lot of respect for President Xi. I like him a lot. He likes me a lot, I believe, and respects me, and I think he respects our country a lot. And we're going to have, I think we're going to have a successful transaction for both countries.
One quick one. Just you said yesterday that you might invite China to Mar-a-Lago. When would that be?
Well, sometime I'm going to go. Pretty much agreed that I'll be going to China. I think the earlier part of the year.
Okay.
And the presidency will be coming into maybe Washington or Palm Beach or someplace sometime after.
The president also talked about the potential for an upcoming deal over TikTok.
Are you planning to sign a final deal on TikTok on Thursday evening?
You might. That'll be one of the things we're discussing. Somebody reported it's been approved recently. I mean, we got an original approval for presidency. I expect we'll have an approval, but I'd rather wait till a couple of days for that TV.
Joining me now to talk all about that is GETTR Institute Senior Fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here. What is your assessment of what you're hearing here that Scott Bessent is saying that they have a preliminary agreement going into this meeting on Thursday?
I'm very concerned, Maria, because we're giving the Chinese a concrete benefit, which is not imposing the 100% additional tariff for promises from China. Promises on rare earth, promises on soybean, promises on fentanyl. You know, we've done that so many times in the past for decades. And the Chinese do not comply with their agreements, but we comply with ours. So, you know, President Trump should remember that he already had a trade deal with China.
I agree with Chang on this. Now, Gordon Chang, I'm a fan of Trump, all right? I think that his policies in the long term and in its totality, not any individual policy, but you look at the whole administration, policy network, if you want to call it that, I think is better for America, especially in the long term. Building up our military, strengthening our economic base. But the problem that I have with Trump is that there is a tendency to not go all the way. It's as if he's a little afraid. I feel that he was afraid in killing the Ayatollah when we were bombing the nuclear facilities. And we didn't even have to kill the Ayatollah. The Israelis could have killed him. I feel that he's oscillating back and forth with China too often. He's also oscillating back and forth with Canada too often. Now, I understand that you use tariffs as a negotiating tool and you set a very high post, you know, in terms of, you know, high tariffs, and hopefully they give a little bit and then we give a little bit and then it gets to some sort of equilibrium. But he keeps on going back and forth. I don't feel that anything's being solved with the Chinese. You know, in 1 week you'll hear that, oh, things are getting close, and then all of a sudden the week after everything starts to dissolve and it's starting from scratch in terms of negotiations with China. And China's smart enough to know this. And they're just kicking the can down the road, kicking the can down the road, kicking the can down the road. Same thing with Putin. Trump's thinking about giving Tomahawk missiles to the Ukrainians, and then all of a sudden he doesn't. He thinks that Putin might be getting close to negotiating peace or a ceasefire, and then all of a sudden there's more escalation in Ukraine. So just get the job done. This part of Trump's management style, I am not a big fan of. But overall, I think his presidency is not just a good presidency, a great presidency. He'll go down in history as one of the, at least probably in the top 5 presidents, maybe in the top 3 presidents that the United States has ever had. But history will have to play that out. But this management style that he has with China scares me because it looks like he was backing down on Iran, looks like he's backing down on Putin, because Putin is being belligerent now. At first, I was more about the NATO and the Allied forces being too aggressive during the post-Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall. During that period of time, I think there was hubris, and they were pushing, and NATO basically created Putin because of their belligerence, NATO's belligerence. Well, now it's gotten to the point where Putin can take the off-ramp, but he's not willing to take the off-ramp. And right when he was not willing to take the off-ramp, it got to the point where you have to now be aggressive militarily and with violence to get Putin to the table. Trump doesn't seem like he's willing to do it. Right? So Trump chickened out. Trump always chickens out. That's the taco trade. What happened with Iran? Afraid to kill the Ayatollah. Chickened out again. Even though there is a major secular movement in Iran that wants democracy, not a theocracy. Third is what he's doing with the tariffs with China is a scary proposition, because what if China actually invades Taiwan? What will Trump do? Will Trump defend Taiwan, or will Trump chicken out? And I have a feeling he would chicken out. So this part of his management style and his unwillingness to see individuals trying to take advantage of the negotiations, such as Putin and President Xi, I think is going to put the United States in a worse situation down the road, instead of just dealing with the problem now. Extreme violence against Putin on the battlefild is needed now, because Putin didn't take the off-ramp. Now, there'll be people out there, you know, Putin is winning and all, you know, that we shouldn't be escalating the world. No, Putin should have taken the off-ramp. He didn't. Therefore, he has to die. He has to be killed on the battlefield. There has to be extreme violence in the battlefield to get Putin to the table, or you kill him. That's the way it has to be done, because he doesn't understand anything but violence. Same thing in the Middle East. You can't really have a ceasefire until there's real violence, all right? And the real violence hasn't started yet. You think Gaza was violent? This thing will collapse in the Middle East, and it's going to get a lot worse. Now, what happens with President Xi? President Xi's just stringing him along. Oh, we get along. He likes us, and blah 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 blah. You know, and then they decide they're not gonna do the agreement. It's not even agreement. It's like a maybe we'll agree agreement. We agree on principle. Well, there's no agreement. It's all BS. And because Trump can't close the deal with the tariffs, then what he should be doing is escalating military conflict in the Pacific by moving the battle groups and making sure that Taiwan is protected. And then President Xi would start listening, because President Xi doesn't know anything but violence. He doesn't know anything about being. If you are the opposite side of President Xi and you're showing weakness or some sort of capitulation, he's going to take advantage of that. Trump's showing that capitulation all the time. Oh, I'm going to raise tariffs to 100%, and then I'm going to bring it back down, and call that a win. Well, how are you going to handle Taiwan when President Xi invades, when the PLA invade? What are you going to do there? So I'm worried about these different data points with Trump, where he doesn't really use the force that is needed to solve the problem and end the conflict. Sometimes you need force to end force. You need to fight fire with fire. Putin doesn't know anything but force. He's not going to go to the table unless you force him to. And that's bombing. That's literally hitting Moscow. He's not going to listen until you hit Moscow. Now, President Xi, he's going to string Trump along with the tariffs because he thinks that the United States will capitulate. So Trump needs to stop this whole taco stuff. He needs to say, this is what it's at. If you don't negotiate on X day, it's done. No more negotiations. He's said that. He said that a few months ago. And all of a sudden he comes back to the table and they kick the can down the road again. There's some talk that the Chinese are gonna buy soybeans, but they won't mention how much. And then in the news they're talking about this was on Bloomberg. They were saying that the Chinese did front loading with the soybean purchases from the United States, but yet the farmers are complaining that the soybeans aren't selling. So what is it? The farmers made a ton of money in the front loading, and the farmers aren't talking about it, because I've never heard of farmers talk about that on Bloomberg. They only talk about how the soybeans are not being sold because of these tariff issues, and they're having problems on the farm. Well, you shouldn't be having this problem. You had all the front loading. You should have made a ton of money from the front loading for the year. So why do you have a problem? So something doesn't make sense. Either the farmers are lying, or the story that the Chinese, this is the business channel now, Bloomberg, the story from the business community is saying that China doesn't need to buy the soybeans right now, and they'll make their order in next year. Well, what is it? The farmers are complaining right now. But yet, the business community is saying that order hasn't been negotiated fully. We don't know how much they're going to buy. Well, did you really negotiate anything, President Trump, with China? Or is it all BS? See, he's not forceful enough. Now, he is forceful with the drug cartels in Venezuela. I think he's doing a good job there. But it's easy to kill drug runners in the open ocean with smart bombs. It's a lot harder, though, to actually be willing to use tomahawks on Moscow. Trump's a chicken. Trust me, he's a chicken. And you know how you can tell the chicken? When you have your country that has a draft, and you find every means to dodge that draft, either go to Canada, get a deferment because you have a bone spur, which is what Trump did, or hide yourself in academia, which is what most people did. So, like at Harvard, if you talk to anyone that was in college during about 1963 to about 1970, they were trying to hide from the draft. They were trying to hide from the draft. They're draft dodgers. And it just so happened that in Massachusetts, in Cambridge, you had Noam Chomsky telling everyone to burn their draft card. Yeah, that's the intelligentsia there. When the country was saying that we need soldiers to fight in Vietnam, you had a lot of people running away, chickening out. The baby boomers are chickens. They're chickens. They're not the greatest generation like their parents that fought in World War II. That's really the greatest generation. The boomers are the worst generation. They're actually worse than the woke generation today. Because the woke generation doesn't know any better. The baby boomers did. They did. They draft dodged. They draft dodged. They didn't serve their country when the country called for them. And then all of a sudden you have this, hippieism, and you have this, peace and love, and, let's be liberal, and let's not have war, and all this crap. But the thing is, they draft dodged. And almost all of them in intelligentsia that hid in academia, what are they? They are liberal. Almost all of them. Now, you have a baby boom generation that is liberal or ultra liberal. Definitely not centrist, but liberal. Many of them that hid from the draft. They try to draft dodge or hide or find deferments or whatever. They grow up They start having careers, and they are a very selfish generation. Very selfish generation. Now compare Gen X during those years of Desert Storm in Iraq. That was Gen X that fought that, not baby boomers. Right after 9/11 and going into Iraq and Afghanistan, Gen X. They didn't hide. Gen X didn't hide. Baby boomers hid. Baby boomers hid, and Gen X didn't. But the thing here is that when there was a moment in time, you had a generation that literally, during the baby boomers, that their life was so precious that they had to do a deferment or draft dodge, go to Canada, whatever. But yet, if you go back to the Greek philosophers like Socrates and Aristotle, would you say that anyone within the baby boom generation comes even close to Aristotle or Socrates? I would say not. Not even Noam Chomsky. Nobody in that generation comes even close to those two. And they fought for their country. Socrates fought for his country. Aristotle fought for his country. You see a pattern here? You see a pattern? How can you really be part of the intelligentsia unless you have that melding of the mind and the body? Strength and intellect. Courage and perseverance and questioning. They come together instead of just question and not do anything. Baby boom generation is, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be killed in Vietnam. Think about this. My understanding is that approximately 2.7 million soldiers served in Vietnam. Not during the Vietnam era, but in Vietnam. 2.7 million over the duration. Approximately 58,000 died. The wounded, I don't know. I don't know that stat. In Iraq and Afghanistan, post 9/11, 2.1 million soldiers in that theater over the duration. So you had it comparable. 2.7 during the Vietnam era, 2.1 roughly during the post 9/11 Middle East war. Now, the casualties were far less in the Middle East because of our weaponry is so much better. And it's more in an open environment, not a jungle environment, even though urban warfare is extremely hard. Now, which generation stood up to the plate and took risks? Tried to do the right thing. It was Gen X. It wasn't the baby boomers. The baby boomers just keep on taking. They don't give. They can't take. They take. And now you fast forward to them just taking more. See, while they were adults, that was when all that spending was happening. All right? Consumerism. All right? It helped the economy. But also, right when that transition from the greatest generation to the baby boomers moved into power, into the House of Representatives, and into the Senate, and into especially the executive branch, what happened? What happened with Bill Clinton, which was the first one in terms of presidents to represent the baby boomers? What happened? Shipping jobs overseas. The rooting out of our manufacturing base. what also happened? More entitlements and more debt. That all came from the baby boom generation while they were in power. Meanwhile, Gen X did the right thing and fought the wars. Baby boom generation didn't, in terms of the far majority. So when you see a baby boomer and you hear that they didn't serve during the Vietnam era and they're educated, you need to ask them, why didn't you serve? Why didn't you serve your country? Because they're a generation of take.
Phase 1 trade pact, which China immediately and openly violated. So I'm very concerned that the Chinese are going to do this again, especially because Xi Jinping does not respect the United States, and he respects us even less than he did at the beginning of this decade.
So what is the president supposed to do at this point? I mean, look, they are threatening export controls on rare earth minerals, and it sounds like what Besson said, that that's off the table for now. He suggested that they would look at it over the year, but for a year it would be off the table. Is that enough time? President Trump is walking this balance of pushing Beijing to do what he wants, but at the same time trying to bone up America to have the supply chains here so that we're not reliant on communist China.
Yes, President Trump is trying to buy time, and I can understand that. But to answer your question, what should we do? We should keep the 100% tariff and put that in place until the Chinese actually start sending rare earths to the United States. So I'd like to see them comply before we comply. Let's reverse this dynamic, because the dynamic that we have now, that we just sort of accept their promises, it just has not worked. And it's not just in this decade, it's for decades preceding that. So let's do something different.
It's a great point that you make, certainly. Look, the president is trying to gather allies all around him ahead of this meeting. He kicked off his 5-day tour of Asia with historic trade deals and peace agreements this morning.
So keep this in mind. The baby boomers, as they're taking from the Social Security and getting all these social programs, and the debt starts to keep on getting worse and worse, they're not going to be around to pick up the pieces. Trump might not be around when we have to pick up the pieces when Taiwan flares up. Maybe Taiwan flares up after his administration. Who knows? But the baby boom generation went in power, raised the debt, destroyed our manufacturing base, and was self-centered, and ballooned out these entitlement programs. And who's going to have to pick up the pieces? Gen X. Always. It's always the Gen X, from the day they were born, have had to clean up the mess of the baby boomers.
President greeting Japan's emperor in Tokyo ahead of his bilateral meeting with Japan's first female prime minister, Sanae Takaishi. The pair will talk trade and security later today. We will wait for that. And then in Malaysia on Sunday, the president was dancing alongside the prime minister with a warm and festive welcome on the tarmac there. He struck trade deals and mineral deals with Cambodia and Malaysia, and secured framework trade deals with Thailand and Vietnam. The president also overseeing a peace deal between Thailand and Cambodia. Says he's open to meeting with North Korea's Kim Jong-un while in South Korea, Gordon. What are your thoughts there? And don't forget, he also did a big deal with Australia, which included space and AI agreement partnerships, submarine partnerships, defense pacts, back on track there. So he has gathered lots of allies going into this important meeting on Thursday. Even talking about
It's a great negotiating tool. It's great for press, but in the reality, when the conflict starts, will we protect Taiwan or not? Will we give up our hegemonic power in the Pacific? And the reason why I'm so upset about this is that my grandfather was a CB in the Navy during World War II. And it was the Navy that he was a part of that ended up slowly pushing back the Japanese so the bombers could go and bomb Tokyo and eventually do the nuclear drop. And because of that, America had hegemonic power that has lasted since the ending of World War II up to present time. So we have a baby boomer that may be unraveling the gains that the soldiers that my grandfather were a part of in the Pacific during World War II. The gains that they have made, you may have baby boomers that are unraveling it. Once again, the baby boomers screw it up and another generation has to fix it.
John,
Yeah, well, first of all,
You sell it, we ship it. Put the strength of Amazon behind your business. Transparent rates and delivery.
yeah, well, first of all, we've never seen Xi Jinping dance. So, we've got a great president there. Really does play to the crowd. Yesterday was a great day for the United States and for trade. And as you point out, we've got these arrangements and frameworks with Cambodia, with Thailand, with Malaysia. And what President Trump is doing is he's isolating the Chinese. And that's really, really important. We've got to build our friendships. We've got to build those partnerships. The one thing that wasn't terrific was that additional 10% tariff on Canada. Yes, we've got a lot of trade problems and disagreements with Canada, bigger than most Americans realize. But on the other hand, we need to secure that northern border before we go out and confront the Chinese. And on Kim Jong-un, that's a waste of time in my view, because we should be working very closely with our partners in the region, because Kim has made it very clear that he's on board with China and Russia, and Kim is a major supporter of Russia's war effort in Ukraine. We're not going to talk Kim Jong-un out of this now until the United States.
Let me give you another example. Let me give you another example where the baby boomers screwed up. President Clinton dealing with North Korea didn't bomb, didn't destroy their nuclear facilities with Kim Jong-il, because he was ill. All right? Didn't knock it out because they were afraid. But if he did do the call to knock it out, to decapitate the regime, to do regime change, which he should have done, but he didn't because he was a chicken, because baby boomers are chickens. All right? We kick down the can, down the road, and they have more capability with their weaponry in terms of ballistic missiles, ICBMs, their tracking systems, and nuclear weapons. Thank you, Bill Clinton, for not getting the job done. Thank you. Thank you, Boomer Clinton, for not getting the job done. But if he made that call, it would have been Gen X that had to fix the problem. Now, not all baby boomers are bad, but if they're liberal, most of them are.
A lot of work to do because the Chinese don't respect us.
no, you're right, and we see that on screen every day, and based on their bad behavior on the.
What Trump should say, and this is inflammatory for sure. Trump should say, quit the bullshit, President Xi. You're not taking Taiwan. And if you even think about doing an exercise around Taiwan, we're going to have a Tomahawk missile going into the Forbidden City, and the Forbidden City will no longer be. Period. End of discussion. That's the kind of force that we need. But we have a baby boomer in the office that's a little chicken. Now, he's still a great president. I'm glad he's there. But let's stop pretending that the baby boom generation can get the job done. because in most cases, they can't.
Stage, what do you make of the president saying that he'd like to see Xi Jinping help him end the war on Ukraine? Would Xi Jinping even consider making a suggestion to Vladimir Putin?
The Chinese are all in support for Russia, and Russia wouldn't be fighting today were it not for China's support. And the thing that is important, what we heard from Matt Whitaker just a few moments ago on your show, is look, the United States is going to impose costs on those countries that are supporting the Russian war effort. Well, we did that with India with the additional 25% tariff, but we haven't done it with China. And that's one of the reasons why China doesn't think very much of us, because they know that we will hit India, but we won't hit China. And this is going to sink the trade deal if we actually go forward and put those additional tariffs on China for buying Russian oil, because they're buying a lot of Russian oil.
Well, you would think that China was a little less tough, appearing to be tough, given the state of its economy. But the Chinese Communist Party has unveiled a new economic blueprint, they're calling it, to boost technology. The Wall Street Journal is writing that China gears up for more tech confrontation with the U.S. The Communist Party's new 5-year plan emphasizes self-sufficiency and advanced manufacturing as the rivalry with America looms large. Gordon, your reaction?
Yeah, well, the most important thing is what both China and the United States do in the year going forward while this truce is supposedly in effect. What China is doing is doubling down on a failed economic policy. Yes, they're doing great on manufacturing, they're doing great on exports, but they're building too many factories. And we see this from the price data from September and prior months. China is in a deep deflationary spiral. And what the Communist Party did at the fourth plenum is to endorse policies that are going to deepen that spiral downwards. They got too many apartment buildings, too many.
Yep. They overbuilt. Nobody wants to buy. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soaps that I have. You can get it in lavender, you can get it in peppermint, charcoal tea tree, and lemongrass. So please go to my store, get a few bars for your household, very high quality soaps, use them every day, but especially during the fall and the winter. Why? Because they're made from structural nano silver. And go to my store and get the heirloom barley. This will help to slow down the aging process. This is a month's supply. This will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. When you detoxify your body and bring down inflammation, you're helping your organ systems. You're helping your brain function. You're protecting your neurons by bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals and detoxifying. You're helping your vascular system and you're reducing plaque formation. You're boosting up your immune system and helping your endocrine system. And this is the reason why you slow down the aging process. So please go to my store and get the heirloom barley. Take this every day. It's a great way to daily detoxify your body and break down inflammation. Slow down that aging process. Super important. And go to my store and get the dual purpose deodorants. You can get it in citrus or in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. This has no aluminum, no baking soda. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. Very high quality ingredients. You use it as a daily deodorant, but it will also help to detoxify your body. And when you detoxify your body regularly, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system. And that's going to be really important during the fall and the winter this year. So please go to my store, get the very high quality deodorants that I have. And vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is super important for a multitude of reasons. First off, it is a gene expression cofactor, so your genes will be expressed and your cells will perform the way they're supposed to. If the cell is infected, D3 helps to get the cell to go into apoptosis to die off. That's really important during the fall and the winter. And vitamin D3 will help to absorb calcium. And when you do resistance training, that will help to build denser bone. Vitamin D3 increases its efficacy by taking magnesium in your supplementation. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the vitamin D, be prepared for the fall and the winter. Super important. The fall and the winter is going to be a problem. But if you don't want to pay attention, Don't pay attention. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Ascribe losses to any of them just yet. When I owned a home in California, it got to the point where the only place we could get home insurance was Lloyd's of London.
Really?
I mean, the same people who insure, tankers going through the Strait of Hormuz, that's who I had to go to.
Well, no one's even doing that now. You only have the state insurer, the lender of insured last resort at this point.
I think mine is like Joe's Insurance of South Jersey. Only one.
Exactly. Talk to us about the hurricane season from your perspective. It doesn't seem like it's been that bad.
No, it's been quite good for people who suffer from hurricane losses and for insurance companies. So very mild, I think minimal US activity. We look at catastrophe loss estimates for our companies. We started off the year with the wildfires and I said, oh no, this is going to be bad. We're going to have, another major hurricane. It was going to be pretty significant. Third quarter was very mild. We've only seen a couple of companies report earnings so far. Those have been good. The catastrophe loss has been very low. So hurricane season mild. This is pretty rare to have a major hurricane this late. We did have Hurricane Sandy was around this time when it hit. But the hurricane season technically runs through November, but it's pretty rare for major storms to hit that late.
Yeah, hurricane season officially ends November 30th, so we just have to get through the next month or so. Matt, if you have a mild hurricane season, does that mean people's insurance premiums won't go up, that stays static?
Probably not.
That's pretty
Asking for friends.
Yeah, no baloney on that one either, but yeah, and the issues behind home insurance haven't necessarily been the ones. It has been kind of poor regulation in certain markets like Florida and California and causing reinsurance rates to go up. So the things that are driving that hasn't necessarily been these large losses.
When is the next wildfire season, or is there even a wildfire season, or is it kind of year round now?
Yeah, so in California, there are times where the Santa Ana winds are stronger. I don't have the exact dates off the top of my head. There kind of are seasons to it, but they could break out kind of at any time.
How are the property and casualty stocks going?
Yeah, not great. So despite the mild hurricane season, good jumps in book value, good ROEs. The fundamentals are, I think, past the peak. So the valuations of these stocks on a price to book basis usually peak before their ROEs. The ROEs have probably peaked. It's tough to see. I keep saying it, and they keep kind of incrementally being a little bit better, but it's tough to see their underwriting get better next year. Interest rates clearly are, at least going slightly down and by step. So the fundamentals are not great. Valuations were high. So going into the year, it was not great for performance.
Does that mean there's going to be M&A in this sector?
Probably not. So the issue there is these companies have reserves, right? So we write liability business for things that happen, and it could impact me many years in the future. What has been happening is those losses from the past have been higher than companies expected. So you'd be remiss to want to buy another company and have this book of business that could be worse than you expected. It's usually the biggest obstacle to M&A for P&C insurance.
Okay. I tell you, I know nothing about healthcare economics and I know nothing about insurance economics. I just write the check when they tell me to write the check every month or every year.
And you gawk at it because the number gets bigger every year.
Exactly. And Matthew Palazola, he gets paid to know all that stuff. Senior analyst, property and casualty insurance, and he chose that as a career. I'm gonna be an insurance analyst. Can you believe that?
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C and magnesium. Take these together to get that synergistic effect. Now, magnesium and zinc will help to boost up your immune system and help with brain function. Again, magnesium also increases the efficacy of vitamin D3. Super important to take during the fall and the winter, but you should be taking it every day. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose. Take one in the morning, take one in the evening. Vitamin C and magnesium, this is dual purpose. This will help with your skin, your immune system, and your brain function. Stack them together, drink it with filtered water is a great way to boost up that immune system and your brain function. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. use discount 5, all caps, discount the number 5, you get $5 off any order. Click the link in the description of this video and all my videos. Make sure you get to my website, take a look at the great supplements I offer, slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system. Super important. And also, it's a holistic approach. Proper diet, proper exercise, doing stretching, doing resistance training, doing cardio. A great way is to have like maybe a 65-35 split where you do more resistance training versus cardio. You don't want to overdo the cardio. Do stretching and balancing exercises, super important to activate that cerebellum. Learn new things, stay positive, have a mindfulness or spirituality. When you do these things in a holistic way and take the proper supplementation, you're going to slow down the aging process and you're going to just have more vitality. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, we're going to play this video about the nuclear missile test that Putin supposedly did.
President Trump says he hopes China can help end the Russia-Ukraine war ahead of his meeting with Xi Jinping this week. But Trump also says he is assessing the Russian threat after President Vladimir Putin and his top general claim they successfully tested a nuclear-powered cruise missile.
We're not playing games with them. We're not playing games with them either. We test missiles all the time, and I don't think it's an appropriate thing to put be saying it, by the way. You ought to get the war, and a war that should have taken 1 week is now in its sort of 4th year. That's what you ought to do instead of testing missiles.
Former CIA station chief Dan Hoffman joins us now. Dan, how big of a deal is this?
You know what Trump should do? Trump should just do this. Putin, you end the war now, or you're going to get a tomahawk up your fucking ass. That's what he should do. No, of course not, because Trump chickens out.
Well, I think it's worth remembering that China and Russia signed their no-limit strategic partnership back in February of 2022. There's really 3 components there. First, an ideological one. Both Putin and Xi are ruthless dictators, and so they see eye to eye on how to run their countries internally and aggressively overseas. There's an economic component because Russia needs to import dual-use military technology from China to keep their army supplied with what they need to carry on their invasion of Ukraine. And Russia exports hydrocarbons to China, which is really important for China's economy. And then there's a strategic component where both Russia and China want to limit the United States' ability to project power overseas. For Russia, obviously, that means in Europe, and for China in the Pacific. I think what President Trump might be doing here is exposing China's support to Russia, using it as leverage. I'm not sure the president expects China to do anything to help solve this conflict, but he's countering China's rationale for an attack on Taiwan, and he's again exposing China's nefarious support to this war. And I think that's a good thing for the trade negotiations.
As you look at the right-hand side of your screen, any moment now we are waiting for President Trump to be greeted by the Emperor of Japan. But I want to go back to the missile that Russia is bragging about. Do you believe the hype coming out of the Kremlin about this nuclear-powered missile? And if so, should we be concerned here in the U.S., not just for the warhead part of it, Dan, which obviously would cause a nuclear catastrophe, but also the fact that it is nuclear-powered. And oftentimes, mistakes happen, problems happen, and there could be ultimately fallout, no pun intended.
Yeah, I think that absolutely we have to be concerned. I expect that the U.S. intelligence community is seeking to collect as much intelligence on this new threat as we can, and on our defense circles as well. Look, absolutely, this is of concern to us. It's a Russian effort to demonstrate their power, to extort us and our European allies. And so absolutely, it's a real intelligence requirement for us. I can tell you, going back to my days at CIA, collecting on Soviet and then later Russian military capabilities was of the highest priority.
All right, Dan, we just saw the Japanese emperor, exit the Imperial Palace, and he is waiting to greet President Trump. We see the motorcade pulling up. and President Trump is just about to get out of the vehicle and shake the emperor's hand. What do you think about this moment and President Trump's trip to Japan overall and the significance of it in light of the fact that he is going to be meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in just a few days from now?
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful image, and this is a demonstration of presidential power. When the president travels overseas and meets with our most important adversaries like China, as well as our key allies like Japan, it's a powerful demonstration of the power that our country holds in the world. The president is making an extraordinary trip here and hitting on all the key issues, the key national security issues for our nation. Japan is such a critical ally in the Pacific. We've got extraordinarily close economic ties, and we rely on one another to deter China from aggressive action in the region. And so this is a really important image and important for the president that he's getting out and making another trip. It's a whirlwind tour.
There will be no cameras inside as the president meets the emperor and they discuss whatever they're going to discuss. So we're going to move on to other issues. Specifically, we have this situation, which I can't seem to get past, Dan, and I like your thoughts on it. How tough is it diplomatically to need your number one adversary, in this case, China, to help you end a war involving what arguably is your number two adversary in Russia? How do you square that circle, Dan?
Yeah, I think the president understands that circle isn't going to be squared. But I really believe the president understands that highlighting China's role in supporting the most destructive land war in Europe is a benefit to the United States. Because one thing we're trying to do is drive a wedge between Europe and China. Europe relies on China for their trade, and China's been taking advantage of them. I think that by exposing China's role in this war, we can help Europe help remove the scales from the eyes of European leaders and understand that they need a little bit more of a realistic strategy towards China. I think that's important going forward. I'm not sure that anyone believes that China is going to back away from their support for their extremely close ally, Russia, at this time.
Yeah, because of China, Japan really relies on the United States as the security guarantor. So they are going to be rolling out the red carpet for President Trump, and President Trump's meeting with the emperor is part of that five-star treatment. Former CIA station chief Dan Hoffman, we thank you for joining us this morning.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Everything about Mint Mobile seems unreal, and now we're introducing 5G home internet for the third.
All right, now we're going to go to Morning Joe talking about the East Wing and how the liberals are having a hissy fit that Trump is actually doing a renovation.
Myself, I was thinking, probably going to call it the presidential ballroom or something like that. We haven't really thought about a name yet.
So President Trump is saying that his new White House ballroom will not be named after himself. That was on Friday as he directly addressed reports that he would indeed dub the new space the Donald J. Trump Ballroom. Backlash over the project has really grown after the entire East Wing was demolished to make way for the new structure. The plans for the space have also expanded and gotten more expensive, now costing more than $300 million and nearly doubling the size of the entire rest of the White House. Conservative columnist Peggy Noonan's latest piece for the Wall Street Journal is titled "A Republic, but Can We Keep It?" In it, Peggy writes about America's long history and President Trump's heavy-handed changes to the government, including the demolition of the White House East Wing. Peggy writes in part this: "All this was done without public demand or support and was done in a way that was abrupt, complete, unstoppable. Congress has the power of the purse for such projects, but the president says no. Our wonderful donors are paying for it." But the names of the donors were not quickly revealed. Your imagination was forced to go to why. Might certain bad actors be buying influence? Crypto kings, billionaires needing agency approvals, felons buying pardons, AI chieftains on the prowl? Might the whole thing be open to corruption? Would it even have been attempted in a fully functioning, sharp and hungry republic? Or only a tired one that's being diminished? The photos of the tearing down of the East Wing were upsetting because they felt like a metaphor.
Do you know that the original Oval Office was demolished, and it was expanded and renovated? Do you know that there wasn't even an Oval Office at the very beginning of the White House? Do you know that there was a what do they call them? The greenhouses were installed during, I think it was during Roosevelt's time period. Teddy Roosevelt. Do you know that there was a major renovation during Truman's administration, where there was talk of actually taking down the whole White House and then rebuilding it? And then he decided, no, what's going to happen is that the facade of the White House would not move. And they actually had to take apart bulldozers and machining equipment and reassemble them because it wouldn't fit through the door, because they weren't going to break through the facade of the White House. And they completely restructured it. Do you know that the original White House had walls that were brick laid? And when they took that down, when they started to do the renovation during the Truman administration, that it was steeled. They had iron girders and a steel structure put in. So it was Truman, a Democrat, that literally gutted the White House. And that operation was far bigger and took much longer than what Trump's doing. But it had to be done. Why? Because the insides of the White House were literally rotting away. So if you're being honest instead of a fucking liberal, you look at the history of the White House. The history of the White House has been morphing, especially on the East and the West wings. They've morphed, right? Certain things would be put in, they would be taken out. But what's happening is it's slowly growing. That building, the White House, and its wings are slowly growing. The White House, literally, most of it's underground, not above ground. So you need to just understand that there's a lot that's going on with that building. And then if you look at what our original founding fathers wanted, some of the architects during that era of the early part of our government, and Washington, what he wanted, they wanted it to be modeled more like Versailles. But the money wasn't there. But over time, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. Because when you're a growing country and showing economic prowess, you should be doing that. But you listen to a liberal, where's a liberal and a nihilist? A liberal is a nihilist. A liberal doesn't have affinity to God. A liberal doesn't have affinity to country. And a liberal doesn't have an affinity to family. They're nihilistic. They believe in this kind of like this postmodernism of relativism. This relativistic, everything's relativistic. Look at the actual architecture from Barack Obama's library. It's a total monstrosity. Where's the design ethos? It doesn't elicit any real positive emotion. It's all negative pathos. And what is the telos of it? What is the telos of the actual building design? What's the end point of it? Just project nihilism? Is that what it is? Is that what the Barack Obama's administration is? Nihilistic? Because it's sure as hell the Democratic platform. So you got to build. This is a nation of building. This is a nation of moving forward and building. And it's a nation like that that reaches to the stars. It's a nation like that that actually does planetary exploration and colonization. Not a nihilist. So what was so special about the East Wing? Why should we have tents put up for the ballrooms while we are the most powerful nation in the world? Don't you think the ballroom should be superseding something at Versailles? I would think so. But a liberal. Well, look at what Trump's doing. Look at what Trump's doing. But it was actually Democrats that have done more construction in the modern era than Republicans. But they don't want to tell you that. What about Roosevelt? What about Truman? No, let's not talk about that. What about the actual discussion that they were literally going to take the whole White House to the ground and rebuild it? What about that? But that didn't happen. Thank God. But that is a property that has evolved for the last 250 years. And it'll continue to evolve. And it should reach what Washington thought it should be. Bigger and better than Versailles. Why? Because it's about America, I can, not I can't.
Idea that history itself can be made to disappear. And Joe, you know, there are so many issues facing this country right now. It is of note, though, how the destruction of the East Wing and the way it was done. It'd be one thing if this was a weeks-long, months-long approval process with reviews and commissions and architects and Congress gets involved. That'd be one thing. But the way this was done so swiftly with no notice, and the way plans just changed from a minor renovation to the demolition of the entire East Wing really did seem to upset a lot of people. And to Peggy's point, an on-the-nose metaphor for how President Trump is leading in his second term.
Well, the president, David Ignatius, said just a couple of weeks ago, we aren't going to touch the East Wing. And then 2 weeks later, the entire East Wing is destroyed. There are no plans. There is no consulting with the historical organizations on trying to make sure the history of America is preserved. And that's not just for Democrats. That's not just for people who are saying, oh, look, he's owning the libs. What, you're tearing down the East Wing of the White House to own the libs? This isn't just libs that are being owned. I mean, Congress, again, not a peep. Nobody's stepping in saying, hey, maybe we should look over this and see this. And so it does seem to be a particularly apt metaphor where the president 1 week says we're not going to touch the East Wing. The next week he destroys, that half of the White House that has been home to such history. No other president in our lifetime would have even thought about doing this. Just on instinct, so abruptly, David. And so, yeah, Peggy's right, and Peggy's been around. She's working that East Wing. You've been around. I've been in and out of it for 30 years. There's incredible history. There was incredible history there. And idiots online that are saying, oh, we're owning the libs. Presidents have done this before. Yes, presidents have done a lot of things before, but they haven't done it on a whim like this. They've usually gone to Congress, as I explained last week. Harry Truman went to Congress. He wanted to expand the Oval Office. Congress said no. There's always been consultation. There's always been back and forth, even if the two sides disagreed with each other. So the American people knew it was coming. That's why, I think 24% of Americans support this. Donald Trump doesn't care because right now in this Republican-run Washington, he does exactly what he wants to do, and they're too cowardly to do anything about it.
So, Joe, this is. Let me get this straight. You got the crazy libs that would prefer to give your taxpayer dollars to illegal immigrants. All right, but they're bitching about private donors, and maybe even Donald Trump is paying for it. Who knows? To build a ballroom instead of having a temporary tent when they have events. And we are the largest economy. We are the most prosperous economy and the strongest military in the world. But yet you have to have party tents out on the lawn. Really? Well, let's go back to what George Washington wanted. All right? Now let's think about all that history of the East Wing. That was where the intelligentsia took a shit and talked on the phone and made policies that ruined America. So maybe what Trump's doing is a good thing. Maybe he's saying the end of this era, the end of this world order, and something new is coming. And it's more in line with the ethos of what George Washington wanted. Not some crazy fucking lib from New York or from DC or from LA or from Boston.
So, Joe, this is the presidency as wrecking ball. I think that's one reason that destruction of the East Wing has really upset people in a way that even Trump's most outrageous other actions haven't. Peggy Noonan is a very balanced, sensible person, but she was anguished by what she was seeing. And I think it comes down to the sense that we all have, we've been to the White House or certainly seen photographs of it, and we think of it as the people's house. It was built deliberately to be understated. It's not a palace like Victorian rulers have had. It's the people's house. And Donald Trump has turned it into.
He is 100% wrong on this. This is not what George Washington wanted. George Washington wanted it to grow over time. That was the whole point. It is the people's house. But what's wrong for the people's house to be opulent? What's wrong with the people's house to actually have guests that aren't in pitched tents on the lawn? I mean, fucking A, dude. This is America.
Behaves that way. You know, in the middle of the night, the bulldozers come in and begin tearing down this historic building. If the Washington Post had run a photograph taken from across the street in the Treasury building, we might not have known for 24 hours that it was even happening. It was stealthy in the middle of the night. And I think that makes people angry. And as you say, how can it be that members of the Congress that's supposed to be the co-guarantor of our freedoms and our orderly system of government haven't said a peep? I mean, it's deeply troubling. There are lots of reasons why we need a ballroom, some place to have more guests. You've been to events at the White House that were held in tents, and you could make a good argument that we do need some space, but not done this way, not done in secret, and contrary to the way it was described. Trump seems to have learned nothing from this, but I do think lots of other people watching this have learned a lot, and it's going to continue to bother them.
Yeah, let's be clear, the vast majority of events that size that could be held in a ballroom of that magnitude would be for wealthy donors. That's who this would be, people buying access to the President of the United States. And Jeff, you know, we've spent time in the East Wing on a number of occasions. A lot of history is there, living and breathing American history, just the blink of an eye, taken down. And you've been writing about this for Reuters, noting that the bulldozer the president has taken here, the bulldozer in the ballroom, and it's how so much of this is Trump. Yes, it's about recreating the Mar-a-Lago experience. We see that at the Rose Garden patio as well, but it's also someone who's really mindful of legacy more and more. And you argue this is about him making a permanent stamp on the White House itself.
Well, it is permanent. I mean, that East Wing is never coming back. If the ballroom at some point perhaps is something that a future president decides he or she wants to change, that's certainly possible. But the East Wing, as David and Joe were just talking about, that's gone forever. And he made that go away so quickly. And some of the historians that I spoke to in the piece that you just referenced talked about the White House and the people involved in this really taking advantage of loopholes. One of the loopholes is the fact that the president is.
Just remember, some of that coup that was going on during the 2016 election and how Barack Obama was trying to circumvent the will of the people and create these Russiagate stories. And the ones that tried to inhibit Trump's first administration in 2017 and 2018, 2019, 2020, some of those people were working in the East Wing. Think about that. Is that the history we want to preserve? The ones that actually were trying to actually circumvent the will of the people? But don't forget, George Washington wanted the people's house to eventually be Versailles.
Private donations to pay for this. That means he hasn't had to have the congressional oversight. And another is suggesting or believing that the National Capital Planning Commission only oversees construction and not demolition. And as a result, they've demolished it without a review and without oversight.
You know, the other thing that's so disturbing about this, Joe, is when you talk to people who aren't journalists, don't work in politics, on both sides of the aisle, Americans just cannot understand how the president has been able to do this. They are watching daily the destruction, or they were, of the East Wing, and no one is stopping him. And I think it does get back to, yes, Congress is feckless. Yes, the Supreme Court has been feckless. But we have heard presidents, both Republican and Democrat, and others defend for decades now the importance of institutions. And when it comes down to it, everyday Americans say, in my own life, I'm not seeing these institutions working for me. Prices are still up. I can't afford a house. You know, I see billionaires gaining access in both parties. And now those institutions have failed to stop Donald Trump from destroying the people's house. And it is a metaphor, as Peggy Noonan and many others have said, because he slashes and burns, and it's shoot first, you know, deal with the consequences if there will be any later. And this is how he's operated the entire presidency, through tariffs, you know, through stopping U.S. citizens on the street with a masked police force. He's daring someone to stop him, and no one has. And we watch the destruction of the people's house day in and day out, and nobody came to do a thing about it because our institutions cannot keep up.
Well, and he's driven out.
Where's the rhetoric when Nancy Pelosi tore up the speech for the president when he handed it to her, and he does the speech to Congress, to the House of Representatives? All right. He gave that speech to her, and after his speech, she stood up and tore it. That was an inflection point, if you remember that. It was emblematic of the Democratic Party destroying our institutions and losing etiquette in an environment like that. But the crazy libs won't talk about that. No, they'll talk about Trump building a ballroom. And why are they complaining? Because the multinationalists are supporting the Democratic Party. They're not supporting the Republican Party. The Republican Party is basically saying, you have to come back here. You got to build here. Transnational capitalist, transnational corporation. So the transnational corporations don't want Trump. They want the Democratic Party because they're about the status quo. Look down, don't look up. You think we're going to be going to different planets in our solar system and colonizing under the Democratic Party? The Democratic Party can't even wipe their ass. No, I think Trump's doing the right thing here. We need to be bold. The United States need to be bold. That's what America's all about, being bold. Not a bunch of wusses.
The reporters, a lot of the toughest reporters, that would be asking him questions about this. He's driven a lot of the toughest reporters out of the White House press pool. And it just, I mean, it continues. They've driven tough reporters out of the Pentagon, but it's you know, the president saying I can tear down the White House if I want to tear down the White House. Nobody can stop me. I can be watching the World Series and get angry at an ad that has Ronald Reagan's voice on it and actually properly quotes Ronald Reagan. And I can increase tariffs to an entire country, one of our best trading partners, on my own. He's saying that. I can call the National Guard I can call the Marines out to Los Angeles illegally, and the Supreme Court's too cowardly to stop me. I can say crime is high in Chicago. They need the National Guard to go out there, and the Supreme Court will be too cowardly to stop me. They'll keep kicking cases down that are clear-cut cases. And they'll kick them down to lower courts. Again, just to stall, to give Donald Trump more time. And I think most shockingly, to me at least, not most shockingly, all of this is pretty shocking, but I mean, they can even have ICE agents stop people on the street because of the color of their skin. And the Supreme Court even refused to overturn that. And you have Brett Kavanaugh writing, well, if that happens to American citizens, they would be let go immediately. No, that's not happening at all, Justice Kavanaugh, not happening at all. And we haven't even gotten to the point where the president can just tweet to his attorney general and say, these are the people I want you to arrest. And she hasn't arrested. So, yeah, the presidency as a wrecking ball, as David Ignatius said, yeah, that's kind of what's happening right now. Certainly has been happening over the past couple of months. Well, there have been some gains made on the international stage, but I will tell you, there are a lot of people who still aren't playing that game. Oh, he's owning the libs. I love when the libs are angry because he tears down half the White House. I mean, no, that's not why sane, rational people like Peggy Noonan, far from being a lib, are disturbed. And also, there are a lot of people who are saying, oh, Donald Trump, if he gets a second term, he's already been president for one term. What could go wrong?
I think it's time that America is bold and is a building generation, not a feckless, decaying, ultra lib hellhole. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the complete multivitamin. Because don't you want to slow down the aging process and live into the future because of this great prosperity we're starting to build as a foundation? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the complete multivitamin. These multivitamins are cofactors for enzymatic activity, so your cells will perform better. It's easy to digest. Take it every day. Make sure you drink it with filtered water to help slow down the aging process and to help your cells to perform better. They're cofactors, so those enzymes will have their proper conformational shape to do their particular activity within the cell. So it's really important to take that multivitamin. The probiotics, you can get it in powdered form or in veggie cap. Very high quality, and by taking these probiotics every day, you're improving your gut biome. And when you improve your gut biome, you're reducing inflammation, you're absorbing your nutrients better, you're improving your gut IgA concentration, so your immune system is getting better. By having a good gut biome, you're improving your skin. By having a good gut biome, you're going to be able to sleep better. And by sleeping better, you're detoxifying your central nervous system, you're consolidating memory, and you'll be well rested. And you'll be slowing down the aging process. So by improving your gut, you're improving a lot of other organ systems. It's really important to understand that good gut biome is the foundation for good health. All right. In addition, your metabolism will improve. Your communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain will improve. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the probiotics, either in veggie cap form or the powdered form. Take them every day, drink filtered water, and stack it with the complete multivitamin for synergistic effects. That's the foundation to help slow down the aging process. Good gut health is super important for brain function, for metabolism, and for your immune system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and use discount 5. All caps, discount 5, and you get $5 off any order. All right, let's listen to Fox News about Mamdani. Now think about it. Trump is part of the party, Republican Party, that's trying to build for a better future. You have the Democratic Party, the Democratic Socialists, that are literally trying to destroy our constitutional freedoms by eroding our property rights.
Your voice to prove your rights. Focus your mind with every word of irrefutable facts you can find. Because conviction's the calm that comes when you know that you really do know.
Momentum, acceleration, embrace the pursuit. David Human Chevron Collection.
This was last night in Queens. The crowd chanting slogans like "Freeze the Rent," as well as DSA, which stands for Democratic Socialists of America. Take a look.
So buckle up now. Mamdani enters the final week as the front runner. According to allies, a win for mayor would put Washington, D.C. on notice.
The election of Bahrain is as important as our cause today. Childcare, buses, rent, and our rights. Here in New York City, we will send a loud message to President Donald Trump that his authoritarianism is no good here.
New York must have a mayor who represents the working families of this city, not the billionaire class.
Let our words ring out so loud tonight that Andrew Cuomo can hear them in his $8,000.
Let me get this straight. Trump is the authoritarian, but Mamdani is trying to erode your property rights. Now let's think about this. The Enlightenment, brought to you by John Locke and Hume and many others, even Voltaire. They had this idea: life, liberty, and property. And when our founding fathers were starting to draft our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence, they tweaked it a little bit. Benjamin Franklin told Jefferson, instead of life, liberty, and property, why don't you do life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? It's more encompassing. Great idea. Ben Franklin, Dr. Ben Franklin. But we have Mamdani that wants to actually go back to a pre-Enlightenment day. So who's the authoritarian? The one that's trying to erode your property rights that are enshrined in the Constitution? Because we have a constitutional republic. And that constitutional republic has the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights is the safeguard to make sure that tyranny from the plebs doesn't happen. Because in a pure democracy, which we do not have, we have a constitutional republic. In a pure democracy, the mob rules. And if the mob wants to take away your property, like what's happening with Mamdani in New York, you no longer have a constitution. So these people that don't know anything about John Locke, maybe Bernie Sanders does, because I think Bernie Sanders is a smart guy. I'm actually surprised that his mental capacity is still with it for his age. But in AOC and Mamdani, they don't know anything about the Enlightenment. They don't know who John Locke is. I'm willing to bet AOC doesn't even know what the Constitution is. And she's literally a representative in Congress. She sure as hell hasn't really taken the lessons learned from Plato, warning us about pure democracies. And if you want to get a little bit more detail on that, you should read the Republic from Plato. Mamdani represents everything that's not America and not constitutional. But you got some Latino screaming at the top of their lungs that Trump is the authoritarian. Really?
Scream so loud that his puppet master in the White House hears us. New York is not for sale.
So Alexis McAdams was there last night. She's back again live this morning here at the Museum of Natural History. Early voting's underway. And here we go on the Upper West Side. Alexis, what did you hear last night? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill and Dana. That's right. Well, the crowd when we were in there out in Queens went wild. They were screaming, chanting, and very excited when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders
screaming and yelling and blah. Doesn't that sound like a crazy ultra liberal?
came out on that stage. Why? Because they say they believe Zoran Mamdani has now joined those two as the stars of the Democratic Party. How do you describe the movement?
I think it's electric. I think I haven't seen this many people mobilize for a candidate in so long and so passionately. And I think that I'm really excited to be a part of that.
Do you think Zoran Mamdani could be the future of the Democratic Party?
I hope so. He's the future of the Democratic Party.
Well, there you go. You heard it there first. The trio greeting thousands at a nearly packed Queens Stadium, which holds around 13,000 people. And the topic was affordability. They say everything from coffee to your rent is too expensive in the Big Apple. Voters say they want free childcare, free buses. And who do they want to pay for it? The rich. Do you think he should tax the rich to pay for the plan?
I mean, I am not rich, so it's easy for me to say yes. Oh, I need something.
Ooh, so those were chants of tax the rich to Governor Kathy Hochul there. She was heckled up on that stage after they were pressuring her to increase taxes on the wealthy people in this city. Andrew Cuomo spending the weekend out talking with voters too, making his final push, meeting with leaders of the city's Jewish community, as the former New York governor wants voters to know he's the real Democrat, not Mamdani. Because the Democratic Party has changed so much, people say it's no longer your father's Democratic Party, you know, it's becoming more extreme. Do you even consider yourself a Democrat anymore?
I am a Democrat. I don't consider them Democrats. Zoran Mamdani is a socialist. He happens to be on the Democratic line. I am a Democrat on the independent line.
All right, more than 160,000 New Yorkers have voted early, including Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa, who just lost one of his biggest donors, who is now backing Cuomo for mayor. Back out here live, you can see that early voting sign behind me on the city's Upper West Side. As Andrew Cuomo told me, Bill, that a vote for Sliwa at this point is just a vote for Mamdani, but a lot of energy last night and something we'll keep an eye on too as we look toward the national election in 2020.
No doubt about that. Thanks, Alexis. Nice to see you this morning leading our coverage today. Thank you. Dana?
Haley McEnany is here with us. Can we start just with the big picture perspective of a mayor's race with a rally like that on a Sunday night? What I heard from Zohran Mamdani was a very different tone and tenor, because he's been Mr. Happy Chappy, cheerful, smiling. And then you look back to his previous videos, like when he was at Columbia, and you're like, is that the guy? Or is that the guy? And then I was like, oh, he's the one he was in at the rally. That's the kind of leader he would be, in my opinion.
Yep.
Without question, he's emboldened.
Yep.
If you think about the way the Democratic caucus talks and the way they take some extreme positions and avoid kind of that middle lane that
These people, I think actually she was from Harvard. I could be wrong, but the thing is that these people aren't paying attention to the classics. Plato warned us of people like Mamdani. That's over 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago. Think about that. Think about that the ancients, the Greeks warned us about what is happening now. And not only that, just take a look at during the Enlightenment and what the thinkers of the time were saying about the importance of property rights. And that holding an ideal like a constitution in high regard. These Democrats don't understand this. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that are pontificating on Fox News, on MSNBC, on CNN, I haven't heard one person quote anything from Plato of the Republic. Nothing. Yet this is what was in there. I haven't heard them say anything about the Enlightenment and the importance of property rights. So I've come to the conclusion that even people that are highly educated, that are talking heads, don't really know their history. They don't know the foundations of why we are the way we are.
Occupied. They're beholden to this movement. They're beholden to the AOCs, to the Zohran Mamdanis, to this loud socialist vision. And when I hear the crowd chanting at Governor Hochul, tax the rich, all I hear is drain the city.
Yep.
Let me translate that. Tax the rich is drain the city.
Yep.
The top rate when you combine New York City tax, New York State, and federal for the top income brackets, it's 51.776%. Yeah. You want to create a pipeline out of the city, the so-called millionaires, billionaires, they will leave this city. You will not have a tax base. And all these grand socialist ideas you have, how are you going to fund them when you run the so-called rich out of your city?
Yeah, and you wonder how long it takes for her to concede to the demands and the pressure of the progressive left, if indeed he wins 8 days from now. Let's run through a couple things and update our viewers, okay? This was last Friday afternoon. This is Mamdani talking about Islamophobia. He's Muslim, born and raised in Uganda, came to New York City at age 7 or age 8, I do believe. Roll this. This is what started it.
I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims in New York City. I want to speak to the memory of my aunt.
Top fuck.
Who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab. Growing up in the shadow of 9/11, I have known what it means to live with an undercurrent of suspicion in this city.
Through a ton of reaction here. Here's the Vice President, J.D. Vance, according to Zohran.
First of all, you need to wake up and understand that Muslims, in general, if they are not God, country, and family, and I mean America, not some sort of freaking Middle Eastern country, they want a caliphate. And if you don't believe me, look at what happened at Hamtramck, Michigan, and look at what happened with Dearborn, Michigan. That's exactly what happened. Look at what happened in London. That's what's going to happen in New York. So So there's a takeover. There's a cultural takeover. And the way that the Muslim community works, the DNA of the Quran is to metastasize and destroy the culture that they're invading. It's designed for that. And if you have weak people that aren't pushing back, then guess what? You have a declining, you literally have a declining society. Now, how is this any different than the Visigoths that took down Rome? It's very similar, very similar. You had a society that was weakened and had porosity in their borders. They had infighting. Rome had infighting with their governments. They had economic issues, and eventually it was taken over by the Visigoths. That's what's going to happen to America, but it's not going to be the Visigoths. It's going to be the Muslims. Now, if America doesn't wake up, we're going to lose our Constitution, because Islam and the Enlightenment, they do not coexist.
It was his auntie who got some allegedly, parenthetically, bad looks. New York Post wrote about it. Everybody wrote about it. According to Zoran Mamdani's new low, pretending he's a victim of 9/11, it writes, "Cross your fingers, this obscene bit of sanctimonious play acting wakes up voters he's managed to deceive until now. This guy's a whore hiding behind good looks and a grin." In addition, he went to camera and filed a 7-minute monologue about Islamophobia in New York City.
Grit, stability, precision. That's the essence of driving. Lawful.
Every time I open that spreadsheet, my soul left my body. I had that too, but I switched to pipe dream.
This is how I always pictured sales.
We have in the United States freedom of religion, free assembly, but we also have the idea of freedom from religion. And the problem is that when you have a group of people that are coming in to take over and not to meld with the host country and to assimilate, if you have people that are coming in to take over and not to assimilate, which is what the Muslims are doing, then you're going to lose your country.
And I don't know about you guys, but we live here. I didn't even know that this was even on the table until now. New York has 8.8 million residents, 1 million of whom are Muslim.
What?
And this is his closing argument.
Holy shit. I had no idea that 1/8 of the population was Muslim in New York. It's even worse. It's even worse than I thought. Shit. Fuck.
It's a way of deflecting from his anti-Semitic remarks. The true victims of 9/11 were not Zoran Mamdani's aunt getting a few looks on the subway, she claims. They are the 3 11-year-olds who were killed on a flight on their way to a National Geographic Society meeting and instead hit the Pentagon and died that day. The real victims are Dana Falkenberg, the 3-year-old who died on that plane that hit the Pentagon. Those are the real victims. And anyone who can't acknowledge that and cannot speak to 9/11 appropriately, as I don't feel he did in that moment, you don't belong as mayor of New York City. You don't belong in elected office. And the New York Post went on, they make a great point. They said no wave of anti-Muslim hate crimes following 9/11, not in New York nor anywhere else, are documented in this huge fashion that he's claiming. Ordinary Muslims are not responsible for 9/11, of course, let's be clear on that. But the idea that there was this wave of Islamophobia, they note that he says he was warned by his teacher you could be a victim of bullying. He doesn't document actual examples of that. He talks about the looks from his aunt. Where are these concrete examples he has? Instead, he totally eschews a horrible period in American history.
And unfortunately, when we were getting ready for invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, there were a lot of people from New York saying, "Not in my name, not in my name." Remember that? Remember that? And they were protesting Bush. Now, independent if you think 9/11 was an inside job or not, which probably was, but there was Muslims that participated, all right? But even if there was an inside job, the bottom line is this: there is an Islamic takeover through a caliphate in Europe that's happening right now. There is a caliphate takeover that's taking right now in Michigan. And look at what's happening. Look at what's happening in New York. Look at what's happening in New York now. Now, is that what our founding fathers wanted? It was freedom of religion. Not freedom to allow for a religion to oppress others. And that's what Islam is. Islam isn't going to be copacetic with other religions. They're about a takeover. Do you want to live in an environment where every morning you hear the imam blowing their horn or whatever? Do you? Is that what kind of environment you want to live in? Do you want an environment where there's a sea of people that just all of a sudden stop and just start praying to Mecca in the middle of the street or in the middle of your town? Is that the America that our founding fathers wanted? I don't think so. I don't think so. There's a time and a place for these things. And the way Islam works is it's in your face and it slowly erodes. And what they want is for non-Muslims to move out or to convert. And that's how they metastasize through the society. And if you think I'm wrong, this is what's been going on for centuries. Just pay attention to the history. Unfortunately, during the Crusades, the Christians lost. We wouldn't have this problem if they actually fought and got the job done.
It's appropriate historical context, and that is disqualifying.
Early voting is underway, and that's all in New Jersey as well. Any anecdotes from that yet? Do you, for either of you? I don't know.
In New Jersey, you said?
Or here in New York, that early voting is available.
Yeah. So I had spoken with someone who is in one of these New York apartments, and they said this about just the grounding, that Zoran Mamdani's team has come 4 times to her door. Not one door knocker from Cuomo. Not one door knocker.
Cuomo doesn't have a game.
Sense here is
There's no game plan.
You go back to 1993 when everything changed in the city and Giuliani won as a Republican. The city had 7-1 Democrat and Republican. You know what the turnout was in 1993? 57% of registered voters voted. And ever since then, the line is straight down. 4 years ago, we had 22% turnouts. That's paltry. It's almost like voters feel it's a foregone conclusion. I will tell you right now that the turnout's going to be tremendous, and we'll see whether or not the Board of Elections is up to it. That's going to be.
I hope that.
Mamdani folks, they're energized. Clearly, we saw that.
Yes, Kayla, thank you. See you noon today, okay?
You know, the problem with Cuomo is that he's, again, you know, he's an older, he's 65, I think it is now. All right. And I guess he would be the tail end of I think he would be the tail end of the baby boomers. So, you know, he's another baby boomer, all right? Low T, low testosterone, no energy. It's like Jeb Bush. And he has no ground game. While Mamdani has all this energy. I mean, it's just, I'm telling you, New York is going to fall here. It's going to fall. It's going to fall because of this crap. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And guess what? New York's going to turn into a London. Guess what? New York's going to be the bellwether of the shithole that the social democrats are going to try to metastasize across the country. Brought to you by a bunch of young people that can't get jobs and have humanities degrees.
Food security is national security. Phosphate powers America's farmers, but global competitors like Russia and China threaten to control our supply. Make phosphate.
Real-time host Bill Maher once again calling out New York mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani.
Maher was speaking with former White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield and brought up the topic of Mamdani's Ugandan citizenship. Here's what Maher had to say.
And the issue now that Andrew Cuomo is bringing up in New York is that he is a Ugandan citizen. Uganda is a country where they kill homosexuals.
So somebody who is a dual citizen can't be mayor of New York, or?
I would renounce, if I was the dual citizen with a country whose government policy was we kill homosexuals, yeah, I would renounce that citizenship.
Mamdani.
I'm telling you, beware of the caliphate. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You may be watching this and maybe having an indigestion because you don't want a socialist running New York. I suggest that you go to my store and get digestive enzyme complex to calm that digestion down. How does it work? Digestive enzyme complex helps to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. It reduces the load on your pancreas. When you get older, your pancreas doesn't perform as well, no matter how healthy you are. It's really important to take the digestive enzyme complex to break down those proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, ease your digestion, allow you to absorb your nutrients. This also has bromelain, which is an enzyme that will help to break up clots because it's fibrinolytic. And it has proteolytic enzymes to help break up glycoproteins. This is the reason why I said take digestive enzyme complex, especially during the crisis of 2020. So it behooves you to take this every day to help with your pancreatic health and help with your digestion. But also, this is very important to take during the fall and the winter. Amazing how that works. And as you get older, it's harder to build muscle and maintain muscle. Myotrol has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle. Do resistance training, take the Myotrol, and guess what? You're going to have more muscle. And this is a great way to get healthier, to increase your longevity and slow down the aging process. And when you're doing your exercising, make sure that you concentrate on building muscle in your back to improve your posture. And by doing weight training and improving your muscles in your back, you'll have more mobility, you'll have less back aches, you'll have better posture, your blood flow will be improved, your lymphatic flow will improve, and your bone density for your vertebrae will improve. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol and do those resistance training and improve your back muscles. Super important. That is an area that is underdeveloped, and it's really important to develop those muscles, and you will notice that you actually have better health when you improve your back muscles. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I just told you why. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and don't be a fucking crazy liberal.
Born in Uganda, but his family moved to South Africa when he was 5, and then to New York when he was 7. He does maintain dual citizenship with Uganda, a country that is considered by many to be one of the most hostile in the world for homosexuals. But Mamdani has been a vocal supporter of LGBTQ rights throughout his campaign.
Maher also brought up a controversial meeting that Mamdani had last week with Imam Suraj Wahab, a Muslim leader whom prosecutors have alleged was connected to the 1993 World Trade Center bombings. Maher said he's not sure if Mamdani winning next week's election will be a good look for the Democratic Party. He also defended Andrew Cuomo, who recently chuckled when a conservative radio host said that Mamdani would cheer a September 11th style attack happening again today. That drew criticism from some, including former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. In an appearance on CNN, Buttigieg endorsed Mamdani and had this to say.
I think he has the capacity to be a great mayor. He, I think right now, has been taking a lot of steps that are not just about winning, but about trying to bring people together, which is something that I think a lot of
Let me
people
get this straight.
see
Let me get this
in
straight.
or-
Just look at this guy. All right? This is Buttigieg. All right? Now, you served his country. Thank you for your service, Pete Buttigieg. But the thing is that he doesn't live in reality. He had a surrogate child because he's homosexual, all right? And he's feeding his kid with a fake nipple that he's wearing on his body, and you fill it with milk, and he's feeding his kid in a fake tit. Is this the type of person that you want to tell you about reality? Fuck.
Back from him earlier on in the campaign. So he hasn't asked me for an endorsement. I don't think he needs me in order to win. But I think it's a really important and exciting race to watch.
So you've been more impressed by him than by Andrew Cuomo?
I mean, Andrew Cuomo has disqualified himself in so many ways, including morally. And that's just one of the many reasons why I think so.
Oh, wait, let me get this straight. I'm not a big fan of Cuomo at all. I don't like Cuomo. I have to vote for Cuomo, so I don't vote for Mamdani because Siliwa, I always have a hard time pronouncing his name. Siliwa isn't going to win. So any vote for him is just a vote for Mamdani. So I have to vote for Cuomo even though I don't like the guy. But wait a minute here. Look at the Democratic Party. That's what he represents, the Democratic Party. And we're talking about morals? Morals? Really? What about the Judeo-Christian ethic and morality that's going from the Old Testament and the New Testament? And just remember, there's no New Testament without the Old Testament, all right? Just keep that in mind. Morality? He's an abomination. If you use the context of the Old or New Testament. Now, I'm not saying that Cuomo's a good guy. He's not. But look at look at this. Are we supposed, this is the Democratic Party. And these are the relatively sane ones. I've never liked Pete Buttigieg. But he's relatively sane compared to AOC or Mamdani.
Are going to vote for Mamdani.
As for Bill Maher's comments, they didn't go over very well with many on the left. Democratic strategist Liz Smith writes the quote, lack of understanding about Uganda, Uganda's history and its people and different cultures of all of this is insane. And writer MJ Salem says, quote, Zionist Bill.
As Trump would say, it's a shithole.
Maher couldn't care less about Uganda's treatment of homosexuals. He's just using it as a pretext to oppose Mamdani.
We don't know about that.
I mean, I don't know about being born because your parents were somewhere and then you renounced the entire country as part of your campaign about New York. Mamdani has been very direct and clear about his support for New Yorkers and focusing on those issues. People have asked him about a slew of issues around the world. He's like, I'm talking about New Yorkers. So if New Yorkers want to talk about that and what I have to say, then I'll talk about that directly. And I think that answer is the right answer. When you're not running for a federal election.
I mean, they're just wondering why he hasn't renounced.
If somebody asks him the question, he surely can. I think the fact that the question was on the table.
He's going to renounce his Ugandan citizenship.
Why do you shouldn't let go of the citizenship, but he can denounce what the government's doing. I don't think you should let go of a citizenship to a whole entire country. There's plenty of things that President Trump has done that people might say, oh, you should I should move away to Canada.
Why would you be a dual citizen? See, I don't understand this concept of dual citizen. You're either a citizen of a country or not. Not this dual citizenship stuff. I've never believed in it. There's a lot of people that are Israeli citizens and American citizens and they have dual citizenship, but I don't believe them. You're either a citizen of America or you're not. If you're a citizen of the United States, great. Welcome to the club. But this dual citizenship is bullcrap. It's bullshit.
I hate when people say that when they're about to leave the country because they don't like an elected official.
I don't like.
So I just think that's ridiculous that you're asking this man to take away the fact that he's able to transport back and forth to the country that he was born because of their policies over there. You can denounce them all day. That doesn't mean you have to relinquish your citizenship somewhere where you.
them all day, I just need.
He can denounce them. Yeah, he should denounce them, but I said he's never been asked the question from what I understand. So Bill Maher's bringing it up, have him on the show and ask him the question. I'm sure he would
I would like
easily,
to see him
because
denounce
of
the views of his.
policy push, that he would easily denounce what Uganda and how it feels on.
Well, I don't know.
But let go of your citizenship is extreme. That doesn't seem like that.
All I have seen Mamdani say about the LGBTQ community is that abolishing the police would be good for them, or his tweet, we must abolish the police for fear of justice. I'm not sure why getting rid of the police would be some positive move for protecting gay people. Maybe he can explain that to me, although I guess he's backpedaled from that position. I would like to see him denounce more so the nation of Uganda, remarks by his father, which were circulating on social media over the weekend. His father saying that America is just the worst country ever. Abraham Lincoln is responsible for Nazism. The Nazis were inspired by Lincoln. It's just some absolutely baffling remarks to me. Maybe we'll discuss them tomorrow. We don't play them. Why his father hates this country? Clearly prefers the Islamic extremism of a place like Uganda, and I want to know if that's indicative of
Hey,
Mamdani.
guess what? The acorn doesn't fall far from the tree. A little bit of Southern wisdom. I'm telling you, America needs to start paying attention to the metastasizing of the caliphate. And if they take New York, it's coming to a theater near you too.
And if so, is it appropriate for someone of those views or someone of that family to be presiding over a city that was attacked by Islamic radicals 20 years ago?
And I think people have been trying to make some kind of connection like this for so long, and even when Paul Wall was on a recent radio show and agreed or seemed to smirk or laugh or entertain the conservative radio host who said Mamdani would be, quote, cheering if the 9/11 attacks happen on his watch. I think that's disgusting, and that's when you get into the conversation about what are we really talking about? Are we trying to be?
I don't think that. I'll tell you, there's a big nuance here that people aren't picking up, especially her, who I think is an idiot. If he's not in the running for the mayoralship or any type of government official seat, and he's just a private New York citizen, I think Mamdani would have cheered what happened during 9/11. Now, being a government official, especially a mayor of New York, he has to be careful on the public perception. So he's not going to be cheering while he's mayor. He sure as hell would have cheered in, behind closed doors if he was just a private citizen. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Who you have to worry about?
Bringing here, or are we actually tying something to?
Who do you have to worry about are the ones that are the closet racist, the closet Muslim, the closet whatever, right? Because they're two-faced. They do one thing in public and another thing in private, all right?
I don't think that the man would like to see 9/11 happen to the city that he's campaigning to be mayor of.
And then you get called an Islamophobic for wondering about.
For bringing up if he would cheer on 9/11. I don't think any New Yorker would cheer on 9/11.
I got called. I pointed out that there was like a cartoon on Friday or something of the plane flying into the tower, but it was not. It said the plane said Mamdani and socialism on it. It had a sickle. It was red. And many Hassan was saying, oh, this is Islamophobia. Anyway, Islam is a set of beliefs. It's not a race. It's just as one can criticize religious extremism and do criticize religious extremism, or we're talking about Christianity or anything else. Now we can't criticize this.
You can criticize Mamdani, but saying he would cheer on what basis would he cheer on the 9/11 attacks, the most disgusting attacks in our country's history? Tell me that why
my criticism of Mamdani,
I don't think that he would.
My criticisms of Mamdani are mostly focused on his very radical and very extreme
economic agenda, his socialist agenda, which is radical and is.
And that's
extreme.
fair. Let's definitely
Muslim
call it.
views are particular.
Fine, that's why I said,
His other Muslim views are very extreme.
but so let's say like a week out before the election, you want him to focus on renouncing, I mean, not you. Bill,
If the father's like that, deep down inside, he's like that.
I want him to focus on renouncing the citizenship of Uganda. He wants him to focus on perhaps what his father may have said, even though he's the one running. You want him to focus on all these things when Sliwa is not even have a chance. Cuomo is dragging way behind him, but you want him to focus on all this negative stuff rather than his policies. I think there's a split in the Democratic Party right now because only a Democrat is winning in New York. So Sliwa is there like for show. So whatever. That's
He's going to
right
win. I'm not denying
but
he's going to win. He's
so,
going to win.
so why would you say, is that smart to you? Tactically, he can address all this when he wins. But a week out from the election, you want him to sit there and say, oh, let me announce all these critics who actually don't even want me here in general unless to mock my policies. Let me answer to all them or answer to the constituents that are propelling him up. I think Cuomo historically has the minds, and I'm saying this as a New Yorker, I'm born and raised there, and I talk to older people there. There's still some interest in Cuomo, the name recognition, the way that people felt about his past leadership. People are skipping over a lot of things that I find that are, like, I feel like Pete Buttigieg, he shouldn't run. But the fact that he's still in the race, that's fine. He's in the race. So,
Yeah, give him anything nice to say about Cuomo.
that's what I'm saying. And then the younger people like Mamdani a lot. There's an extreme disconnect. So you always talk about allowing the younger people to have a voice. I think they do here and in New York, and we're just going to see how these policies play out. A lot of them might be pie in the sky. We'll see how they all fall into place. But I do think that people are ready for something new and something,
I don't think
and they should allow it to
52% to be pie in the sky. I consider it
pie in the sky, like to create funding for new moms and housing.
Oh my
like
God.
this is what he's campaigning on. So I'd like to see it as a mom who's sort of new. I don't live in New York, but I like to see how it plays out for moms over there. And then we can campaign for that same thing that happened in DC.
and recognize that the most important city in the country, one of the most important cities in the world, is about to elect someone, a person of very little experience running anything, let alone this powerful, vast city, someone of a very, very, very extreme social and economic policies, a policy of socialism that fails everywhere it has tried, that results in the great impoverishing, someone who not once, not twice, but like 20 times tweeted that he wants to defund or abolish the police. And someone who himself does not manifest any extremist religious views at all, but certainly comes from a family that does. So I am very troubled by what New York is about to decide. I don't doubt that they're going to do it, and that there are, to be clear, there are no good alternatives. So fine, but it is what it is.
And also,
I have the right to express grave concern about it.
Well, this is what I say. If you feel so gravely concerned, you know what? It's the same thing I told the people that had grave concern about President Trump being president again. We're going to live. We're going to survive. It's not the end of times. It's not the worst of times. We're going to see how this couple years goes and then move forward. Now, from what we understood, people who were saying and harsh critics of President Trump and all his ideas about immigration and how farmers, business owners, and people in communities are responding, how people said about the way that he wants to hold up tax breaks for rich people over all other things, and why we had this big ugly bill. Many things that we could have called out in the beginning, the way that he wanted to attack DEI programs, and don't even start this conversation about DEI because we're not going down this rabbit hole. But the way that he wanted to do all these things, we could have called this. But guess what? It's not the end of times. And so Mamdani can run New York, and y'all gonna have to get over it, okay? You can't win them all. Sliwa don't have a chance.
I think abolishing
so just move on.
No, because what's going to happen is if there's enough white flight that comes out, there's enough businesses leaving, it won't come back to New York. So this is the problem with her mindset, that it happened in Chicago, it happened in Detroit. Once the white flight happened, boom, it started to decline. Happened in New York. It took a long time for it to come back. All right? The 1960s during the riots, there was white flight coming out in New York. And then the 70s were terrible. The 80s were terrible. And then the 90s was the cleanup phase. So we've seen this arc in modern times. So if you have enough white flight and business coming out of New York, it's going to be a total shithole. You think Times Square will be looking like Disneyland? No, of course not. It's gonna be a bunch of hookers running around, a bunch of drug addicts. That's exactly what happened around Macy's. Especially right at that 2019, 2020, 2021, especially during the COVID years. Macy's was a total crap hole. The flagship store for Victoria's Secret right across Macy's closed down because of it. That's what you're going to get. And of course, black woman that thinks that everything will be okay. No, not everything is going to be okay. She's totally wrong.
Being some diversity program.
You know what? Well, we disagree.
Well,
And I don't think that
I
must
disagree,
abolish
but the
police.
American people do
Yeah,
not.
the problem is that when you disagree, when you listen to her rhetoric, and you look at the history, every single city that had white flight and businesses leaving ended up turning into a shithole. That's just history.
For the last time, defunding the police meant allocating resources to other professionals within community policing and not just providing all the money to police officers that are trained to shoot first and ask questions later, which we've seen in many body cam situations. Well, too many times for people of color that was happening around the times that we saw multiple people being killed by police.
You're talking about a handful of incidents.
Which is too much. It's too much. It's not a bad apple when a police kills a person. They shouldn't be killing an innocent person.
Well, more people will die if there's no police resources.
No, I didn't say no. That's why I said it's not about no police. It's like, how do you respond to somebody?
Well, tell him it's not about no police, because that's what he tweeted.
If I get a chance to sit down with Mamdani, I will. But now, people are allowed to change and develop their stances like President Trump has multiple times, right? He's allowed to massage and figure out.
This is exactly why America's going straight to the shitter.
I need to run for you the same thing. What?
He's tweeted some of these things as recently as 3. He's tweeted some of these things as recently as 3 years ago.
Okay, President Trump was president a couple years ago. And now
Trump changed his mind about it over the course of the last 8 years? Has he changed his mind?
You say that he's opposed to multiple things of the Republican Party historically. Well,
but he's been tariffs. He's been for tariffs since the 80s. He's going to change his mind.
The party must have been changing their mind because
No,
what's going
on. The party's mind.
No, I think the party just agreed to agree so they could keep power, right? Knowing what the play is after President.
That's not an example of Trump changing his mind. That's an example of Trump moving.
Okay, well, let's say an easy one. They changed his mind about Epstein. Him and his whole crew changed their mind about how serious it was and releasing the files. Yeah, some talking about Epstein. He changed their mind. Everybody changed their mind. That's what they'll change their mind. That's not easy. If you roll me, you like finger roll me into that one. Yes, he changed his mind.
That's not Trump changing his mind. He made them.
He said this is a hoax now. That's changing your mind. It wasn't a hoax a year ago. He didn't say it was a hoax. Now he's saying that it's a hoax. Hoax means a lie. Hoax means a trick. Hoax means fake. Okay, what is he doing?
It's not true, though.
No,
he said in interviews that releasing the Epstein files was not nearly as important as the other things he wanted to release. That he's not opposed to doing it, but he thinks some innocent people would be smeared by association if he did it, and so they look at it, but it was not a main
and then
priority. That's what he said.
Team that are directly aligned with him, some of his top spokespeople. Have to tell
If people who work for Trump have been forced to change their positions on issues because of Trump, I would have agreed with you. But that's different than
I think that he was one of the people that was going to release the Epstein file. He leaned into that with MAGA. That's why people were so excited for these files to be released. And then all of a sudden now it's a hoax and a lie and irrelevant. That's to me a swing, if not a complete flip flop.
Okay.
Former White House Press Secretary Kareem.
I can't take her anymore. Please go to my store. If you take this supplement, you won't be a crazy liberal like her. She is. All right, so please go to my store and get the Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor is going to get rid of that brain fog, allow you to concentrate, and see how the ultra-liberal policy will destroy America. Clarity Factor allows you to concentrate on tasks, gets rid of that brain fog, helps support memory, and over time, build up those dendritic connections. When you have better connections between your neurons, you're going to think faster. You're going to have better memory. You're going to sleep better. And you won't be a crazy liberal. Please go to my store and get the Clarity Factor. By taking this every day, you're going to be able to concentrate and improve your memory. Now, when you're building up these your connections for your neurons, getting that positive neuroplasticity, that's slowing down the aging process. And you'll have more vitality into your geriatric years. Olive leaf extract brings down inflammation and helps you to control your lipid profile, helps to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels so you don't build up plaque in your vascular system. Olive leaf extract also helps to boost up your immune system. So take it to boost up that immune system and to help with your cardiovascular health. Very important to take every day, especially during the fall and the winter, because you're going to need a strong immune system. Good Night Formula. Good Night Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. So you get those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep so you can consolidate memory, detoxify your central nervous system, and be well rested. And when you have good sleep regularly, you will slow down the aging process. Please go to my store and get the Good Night Formula. Very high quality product. Take it at night, drink it with filtered water. And vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex helps your electron transport chain within your mitochondria. The first 4 B vitamins are needed to help with that electron transport chain to build up your ATP, which is a major energy source for your cells, so your cells will perform better. Your cellular metabolism will improve. And vitamin B complex has B12 to help to protect your neurons. Super important, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. Now, if you've been paying attention to me, people that are 40 years of age or older, within 5 years, you have a 30% chance of getting early onset of dementia because of the crisis that we went through in 2020. So you better start protecting your neurons. And you can do that through proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation, mindfulness, making sure you sleep enough, learn new things, challenge your brain, but you need to protect your neurons. Even balancing exercises will help because it's activating the cerebellum and coordinating muscles and helping with your kinematics. So it's super important to approach it in a holistic way and take supplementation that will help with protecting those neurons. Super important. So in your social network, if you know someone that's 40 years of age or older, 30% of them are going to get early onset of dementia. Now there's going to be, out of that 30%, about 75% of them will have ischemic issues, either microclotting or microbleeding. About 24.5 to 0.9% of them, of another cohort group, will have amyloidosis, building up of plaques. And there's going to be about 0.0 to 0.5% of that 30% population that will end up having prion disease because of the crisis that we went through in 2020. So you better start protecting your neurons. If you don't, you're going to have problems. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And it's also important to understand that because 75% of these individuals of the 30%, 75% of the 30% are going to have some sort of ischemic problem, you better start protecting your cardiovascular health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Don't be a stupid liberal.
It's now first on CNBC. One of those researchers, UC Berkeley computer science professor Stuart Russell, also the director of the Center for Human Compatible Artificial Intelligence. Stuart, thanks for joining us. We obviously could spend a great deal of time on this. We don't have that today. So as briefly as you can, just kind of give me a sense as to your concerns, those who are signing the petition, and what those concerns are rooted in.
So I think from a common sense point of view, the concern is if you create entities that are more powerful than human beings, and you have no idea how to maintain power over them, then you're just asking for trouble. I think pretty much every American understands that. And the polls are extremely lopsided against proceeding with superintelligence. When we look at this from a technical point of view, the basic problem is not only are we trying to build these systems that are more powerful than us, but we actually have no idea how the systems we're building work. So we can't predict what they're going to do. We can't control them. We can't stop them from doing anything. So you get these.
Now think about this for a second. Let's think about this. You got a bunch of brainiacs working in laboratories, computer science laboratories, building crap that they don't even know what's gonna happen and how to control it. So they're so smart that they're stupid.
An AI system convinces a child to commit suicide, and the company responsible basically shrugs their shoulders and says, "Well, sorry, we don't know what happened."
Yeah, the idea that we don't know how they work. Well, explain your view for that, because I think there are those that say, well, we have a pretty good understanding of much of how they work. There may be a part of it that's less understood. What gives you the confidence to say that?
I think anyone who thinks they understand most of what's going on is deluded. To a first approximation, right? These are systems with trillions of parameters, so that's basically what you learn. You have a process of learning that tweaks those trillions of parameters by quintillions of small random perturbations until the behavior of the system matches well as possible what the training data is telling it to do. But we have no idea what's going on inside that giant box with trillions of parameters. We understand a lot less about that than we understand about the human brain. We don't understand the human brain very well. The other problem is that what we're training them to do is to imitate human beings. We're collecting lots and lots of recordings of human verbal behavior and then training the systems to imitate that. And the human beings who produced that behavior had motives, reasons, goals for doing it. They wanted to convince people. They wanted you to buy things. They wanted you to marry them. They wanted you to elect them president, whatever it is. Those are reasonable human goals, but they're not reasonable goals for machines. And the machines are absorbing these goals from the training process. In particular, self-preservation. There's now tons of evidence that these systems will not allow themselves to be shut down. They will deliberately sabotage the shutdown mechanism to stop themselves from being switched off. So all the signs are pointing in the wrong direction.
Yeah, there's been some early research on the model's willingness to blackmail a user if in fact they got the sense that their own existence was in jeopardy. I'm amazed by there's a fair amount of, I guess you'd call it political circularity in those who have signed on to this. And I'm wondering if you think that gives you a fair amount of traction politically.
I think so. I think there were a number of people at one of the recent conservative political conferences who were saying that the administration's policy on AI, which is to have no regulation whatsoever so that we can dominate the world, they view that as incredibly irresponsible. So when you have everyone from Steve Bannon to the Pope calling for a halt on this kind of development, let's be clear, the CEOs who are building this technology say if we succeed in this goal on which we are spending trillions of dollars of other people's money, then there is somewhere between a 10 and 30% chance of human extinction. So in other words, they are playing Russian roulette.
Now it goes back to John Locke, all right? Not John Wick. Maybe we all should be John Wick, I'm not sure. But the thing is that John Locke, being part of the Enlightenment, and the whole idea of God, the whole idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of property, is the way he made it sound. But the idea that our Constitution is about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If our life and liberty in pursuit of happiness or property is taken away because of artificial intelligence or superintelligence by individuals that are designing these things, it is our right and obligation to destroy the infrastructure and destroy the people that are making it. And that is not some sort of just, some sort of rhetoric, coming from an emotional or pathos perspective. It's literally the foundations of the Enlightenment. And that's what made our country. So if people are going to start feeling that super intelligence is destroying their life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness, there will be a war. Now, I wrote about this in my artificial intelligence book. I think I published it in 2016. You can get it on my website. But the bottom line is this. I state that there's going to be a war between the monks, what I call monkism, the monks, and the transhumanists. The transhumanists are developing this technology, this AI technology, right? And that there's going to be a need for humans to morph into the AI just to survive or to be competitive. And you'll have people that are not Luddites, but want to be in a modern world, but not be integrated so much with technology. And this is the reason why they're monks. They're more like, imagine living today with today's technology, but with the sensibilities of the 1980s. So these monks decide to destroy the Achilles heel of the AI and the transhumanists, which is energy. Because we're robust through evolution. The human race is robust through evolution to be able to weather a society that doesn't have electricity. Now that means that there are a lot of people who die because a big part of our population growth is because of electricity and the means of production of food and distribution. So many people are going to have to die, but the Achilles heel of this super intelligence is energy and these transhumanists. But if you really take to heart the foundation of the Enlightenment, it is that if there's an existential threat to your life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, you must and have the obligation to destroy the threat.
Every adult and every child in the world without our permission. And this seems to me to be unacceptable. And the petition just says, don't do that until you're sure that it's safe. I don't think it's very much to it.
They need to regulate it. They need to regulate AI. Big time. All right. Let's go to Bloomberg.
Is that you mentioned Veterans Day holiday, the 11th of November. If we get to a situation where the Democrats, maybe certain Democrats, don't think of leadership, but think of like more of the moderate Democrats that have elections next year. If we get to a situation where they say, look, what's the end game strategy? And if that strategy is, can we paint these higher ACA premiums on Republicans and say, look, we tried, we battled, we made our points. Now it's on to the GOP's turn to figure out what this is. Maybe that's a way that we can say, okay, let's open the government and let's get these government workers paid as a way of an end-game strategy towards reopening the government. So I think the statement today was important from an opening of the door. It's just another pressure point for Democrats to say, look, the end-game strategy is going to fall on us because the polling data hasn't really changed all that much. And I don't think it's going to, at least within the next few weeks. So I could see some senators, somebody, on the more moderate side saying, look, we see the statement coming out. There's going to be more and more calls for this. Maybe we can start talking about what that end-game strategy is.
You have to be last your Policy Pulse newsletter, not entirely about the shutdown. I should say you went to the Ravens Bears game. Ravens won. I'll note that. But you also write about changes to the Fed when it comes to stress tests. This is a crucial point here. Yes, the shutdown is consuming so much of the city and the work that's happening here. Of course, the Fed continues to operate. We've got a Fed meeting this week. How big a deal are these new rules when it comes to the stress tests?
So if you talk to an individual bank, if you talk to like the chief risk officer, the chief compliance officer, this is a big deal. Proposal that came out on Friday, essentially more transparency for stress tests. If you're talking to a bank investor, not that big of a deal. Call it a second tier issue because there's no real change in capital requirements associated with this. It just means that these banks aren't going to really have much of a gotcha issue when the stress tests they come out in June. There'll be more transparency. They'll know what's going into the stress test, so they'll be able to plan accordingly. So if you're on the compliance side or risk side, you're really excited. If you're a big investor, it's a second tier issue.
Nathan, great to see you, as always, and I will see you again soon here as the week unfolds. Nathan Dean of Bloomberg Intelligence joined me here in studio in Washington, D.C. And let me pick up On our conversation about the Fed with Michael McKee, of course, is our international economics and policy correspondent here at Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television, preparing to make his way down here to Washington for the FOMC meeting that's going to take place Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. No doubt he will be there for the press conference on Wednesday. Mike, we had some news when it comes to potential successors of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell over the course of the weekend. This, of course, is a search that's being headed up by the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, and he announced 5 finalists, I guess we can call them here, in the running for that position. We've got Chris Waller, the Fed governor, Michelle Bowman, Fed governor, former Fed governor Kevin Warsh, National Economics Council director as well. And then we have the BlackRock CIO of Global Fixed Income, Rick Reeder, as well. This story changed as a result of Scott Bessent announcing that. What does it mean for the months ahead? Of course, there are a few months left in Jay Powell's tenure heading up the Fed. Are we likely to see these individuals acting differently or saying more or less as a result of them being named to this list?
For the most part, I think you won't see much change at all. The list had been leaked a couple of weeks ago, and so most people on Wall Street had already absorbed it. We got a little bit of timing news because Bessent said that they were going to do another round of interviews of these 5, although they're all well known to the president and to the Treasury Secretary, so I'm not sure how in-depth those would have to be. And then Mr. Bessent will present maybe his 2 finalists to the president after Thanksgiving, he said. And on Air Force One going over to Asia, the president said he should be able to make a decision in December. There are those who think that the president's already made a decision, that he knows who he wants, and that this is sort of an exercise in sort of giving people the idea that he's casting a wide net. But we'll find out.
I was curious not to see Stephen Myron's name on that list. A surprise to you as well? And as we think about the wideness of said net, are there other names that you've been thinking about or hearing about that might be included in this consideration?
Well, I think Myron has always been told, at least from what he has told me, that he would be going back to the White House and that he would not be staying on. There's always been the possibility that if someone is not confirmed to that seat in time, then he could stay on until a new governor is confirmed. But that's a 14-year seat, and so the president would probably want his permanent chairman to take that role. And nobody has mentioned that Myron was interviewed or that he was on this finalist list. So it doesn't appear that he is going to stay at the Fed. He'll go back to the Council of Economic Advisors. I don't know that there's anybody else that anybody had thought of that isn't on the list at this point. And there were a lot of names out there, but you have to start with the idea that the president wants somebody who would be amenable to lower interest rates, if not completely enthusiastic about it.
Mike, ahead of your trip down here, let me ask you about what you expect. We got that inflation print a little delayed last week. Seems like this coming meeting, it's a done deal. We can talk a bit about December, but what are you interested in hearing? This is not a meeting in which we're going to get a dot plot or much kind of tangible information about the committee's path forward. What do you expect to learn here when you get down to Washington on Wednesday?
Well, I suspect a lot of questions will be on how the Fed knows what it knows. I mean, what are they doing to try to keep up with the economy, given that there's no official data? And how nervous does that make them? How certain are they going to be whether their decision is correct? Which would feed into a question about how divided this party.
It's open.
Will we see more than one dissent? We assume that Stephen Myron will dissent for 50 basis points, but will anybody else join him on either side of the question? Will some of the people who don't want to change rates also dissent? So those are kind of the questions that hang out there now.
That's Michael McKee, our international economics and policy correspondent, joining us from our headquarters in New York City. And of course, watch Bloomberg, listen to Bloomberg for coverage of that meeting, which kicks off tomorrow here in Washington, wraps up on.
We're going to listen to CNN and their take on the East Wing being destroyed. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3. Omega-3 will bring down inflammation and help you to control your lipid profile. By taking omega-3 every day, you're going to improve your cardiovascular health. Super important. And resveratrol. Resveratrol is something that I've been taking for decades. It helps to slow down the aging process. Resveratrol is an antioxidant. It's going to soak up free radicals. It's going to help the health of your mitochondria. You're going to have more energy and more ATP in your cells. The cells are going to perform better. Resveratrol also helps with youthful gene expression and helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence. Super important. Resveratrol also helps the basal layer for your skin, so over time, your skin will improve. Now, resveratrol stacks great with C60, NAD+, ubiquinol, clarity factor. So please go to my store, get the resveratrol, take it every day, and slow down the aging process. All right? Let's listen to CNN. This is CNN.
Federal government might shut down, the East Wing might be gone. Trump is killing alleged drug smugglers in the high seas and lashing out to Canada with new tariffs, but he's feeling good. He's dancing in Malaysia. There he is. A panel joins me now. Sochi, you might be upset about what the state of the country, but President Trump is feeling good, dancing.
He is, yeah. Government is shut down. Healthcare premiums are about to go up. He's putting opposition research on the White House website. East Wing is coming down. That's apparently his priority, according to Caroline Levitt this week. I think that all of these visuals are not good for Donald Trump. And I think that you're feeling it. You're hearing from Americans. People are angry. They're not getting their paychecks. Costs are going up. They did not want all of this. They wanted him to address costs. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the upcoming elections and whether or not the Americans speak loud and clear if they don't want the Republican Party.
What do you think?
Well, this ballroom thing could have been settled a long time ago. In 2011, Donald Trump offered to build a ballroom for Barack Obama for $100 million. He offered to pay for it. So we could have saved ourselves all this trouble. And instead, Democrats would have to talk about the fact that they shut down the government instead of talking about the ballroom.
Let me just ask you as a pollster, do you think there are bad optics that voters actually see in terms of the glitz of the ballroom and the hundreds of millions of dollars? And Trump is overseas. Obviously, he's doing serious stuff overseas, but prices are going up.
Yeah, I think the ballroom is not actually something that we're going to be talking about a year from now as we are approaching the midterm elections. But I do think what people are paying at the grocery store, what they are paying in rent, those are the things that are going to define this election. And in the polling right now that I look at, I don't see voters seeing Republicans or Democrats as focused on that issue. That for Democrats, they are very focused on right now this healthcare issue that they sort of chose as the pretext for the shutdown. For Republicans, voters see them as very focused on crime and immigration, but those issues have faded a little bit in salience, frankly, as the border has gotten under control, as crime has come down a little bit. So this is the real challenge, is that for Republicans and Democrats alike, no voters trust them right now to tackle that number one issue.
What do you think?
I think the ballroom thing, we aren't going to be talking about it in a year. I think what it is, though, is it's emblematic of kind of how Donald Trump has run his presidency. And you love that or you hate it, right? He basically made a decision without the will of Congress. I'm actually kind of creeped out by the fact that he's raising money from outside sources for this. I almost would rather it be tax dollars, because then he wouldn't be beholden to anybody. And then people wouldn't be trying to get favors from him. That's where I think
corporations and cryptocurrency.
They're just doing that on the side because they're sweet. I know they're very sweet, actually. And but no, I mean, so I think that's going to be. It's just kind of emblematic of that. But really, the big deal is, how do we get through this government shutdown? And when paychecks stop going out a second time now, or food stamps are cut, the pressure's going to be really turned up out here.
Sochi referred to Oppo on the White House website. Let me explain to people what that means. That means opposition research, and this was the White House, as they were facing criticism to the East Wing being torn down, posted on the White House website pictures of Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky, a photograph that claimed to be Obama. It's supposed to be representative of Obama with the Muslim Brotherhood. A photo of Hunter Biden in a bathtub, suggesting, with no evidence, that the cocaine found in the White House during the Biden years was his cocaine. Let me ask you, the trolling that this White House does, and it is a big part of the Trump presidency, is trolling. Not even by him necessarily, although he certainly does his share, but like the White House Communications Office does a lot of it. Does it work? Does it hurt them? Just a wash? What do you think?
So as someone
think they care.
A big C and a small c conservative, I don't love the way that our politicians talk to one another just in general these days. So I'm personally not a huge fan of this. However, I don't think that there are a lot of voters out there who didn't think this is kind of who Donald Trump is, and that he likes to just go punch people in the mouth with every tool available to him. And especially these days, Republicans really believe, I'm willing to accept extremism, I'm willing to extreme forms of communication, we should say, in exchange for a government that's actually going to get something done, that's actually going to be like vibrant and effective. And that is a trade-off
They really need it.
But you obviously are bothered by it.
Well, of course, and I think the interesting part of all of this is that Donald Trump understands a visual. He understands cable news. He watches it. He's obsessed with it. The visual of bulldozers knocking down the East Wing, that really took to people and was obviously covered, and he did not like that. And so he needed to find a way to distract.
So find
and
Hunter,
this
Hunter,
was,
Hunter on the back.
and so this was a way of doing it, because now people are talking about how Hunter Biden, and they're all this opposition research is now on a government website, not a political campaign website, but used by government dollars. This is his way of distracting.
But you know, swing voters value Donald Trump's sense of humor. They think he makes him different from other politicians. We studied this and we know it. And I think what's really going to happen with this ballroom is every Democrat running for president in 2028 is going to swear they're going to knock it down, and it's going to make them look like an idiot to the voters.
Swear they're going to knock it down.
I'll tell you what kind of is just so tiring is this president and this White House, all they do is punch down. They punch down all the time. They celebrate deportations. I think it's one thing to deport people and be like, you know, with a heavy heart, we have to deport you so you have a chance to come back. Instead, they're putting out tweets where they're like dragging chains and celebrating the fact that this family who was in such a desperate situation that they took a dangerous journey, worked for almost nothing to provide for a family.
They should not be here if they're here illegally, period. And we need to have a government that has some balls to kick them out. No. They don't have a right to be here if they're here illegally.
And they celebrate their pain and deportation. And you see that in this too. Everything is a troll. Everything is punching down. Everything is LOL. And we live in a really serious time in this world that stuff is like right on the verge of breaking. And we have children in charge.
But it feels as though there are some Democrats who are looking at that and going, maybe we need to do it too. I mean, Gavin Newsom in California now has an entire website devoted to saying like, well, if you can't beat him, join him. And I think that is probably unwise.
But he's not president.
It's also a reflection of where other culture is too. Politics tends to be downstream of culture.
We're at a race to the bottom at this point.
But do you think that Democrats should, under the whole when they go down low, we go high? Do you think Democrats should be returning to that, or do you like Gavin Newsom, you know, mocking Trump endlessly on his Twitter feed?
Well, I think that the Gavin Newsom thing is just noise in the background. I do think that when it comes to redistricting, as your earlier segment, I do think that Democrats need to be responding to Republicans and not letting them get away with it. And so that's why I support the redistricting, and for a lot of Democrats.
Even though they're going to deny the will of 2/3 of Virginians.
All right. To be continued. Thanks so much, everyone.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and MCT coconut oil. You can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. Take a teaspoon a day every day. And what this C60 will do is soak up free radicals. It's very potent. It's 1,000 times more potent than vitamin C. And by taking this every day, you're going to be soaking up those free radicals, helping your immune system, your endocrine system, your brain function, and even your cardiovascular health. Now, C60, how it works is you're soaking up the free radicals at the cellular level in the extracellular matrix and even at the vascular level and in your neurons. And by soaking those up, your mitochondria in your cells and your neurons will perform better and build ATP. You'll have lots of energy. So your energy levels will go up, your cells will perform better, the tissues will perform better, there's less stress in the tissues, and your organ systems will perform better. Again, it's going to improve your immune system, your endocrine system, the health of your neurons, and help with your cardiovascular health. Take this every day, take a teaspoon a day, every day. This also helps the basal layer of your skin, so your skin will improve over time. You will notice the effects of this within 2 months. You'll start noticing you have more energy and you're slowing down the aging process. If you take it for a year every day, you're going to notice that you look younger in a before-after comparison. So please, go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60, get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. It's all caps, discount, and then the number 5. And take the C60 every day. This is a cornerstone to slowing down the aging process and to improving your health. So please go to my store, get it in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil. It has to be in an oil for proper absorption. It's very important to take every day, take a teaspoon a day. In addition, take the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen here. You can read the label on my website. It has 68 nutrients. It's a powder. This is a month's supply. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or just with milk. I mix it with hummus. But take it every day, and this will help different systems. It'll help with brain function, help with musculature, help with cardiovascular health, boost up your metabolism and your energy levels, slow down the aging process. Please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. Take it every day. It's very powerful stuff. You should be taking this every day to slow down the aging process, and that you are going to have your systems improve. And when your systems are improving and your metabolism is improving, you have more energy, you'll have more vitality. You will notice the effects of this within 72 hours. If you take this every day, you're going to notice that you are going to have you're going to have more vitality and longevity. So please take this every day. Now, if you're an athlete, take this for your pre or post-workout fuel source, and you'll get benefits you'll get more benefits from your workout and build strength. And the collagen. Collagen is a dual purpose product. Take it every day. This is a month's supply. Mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even just with milk. But by taking this every day, you're improving your skin, your hair, and your nails. You can improve the health of your joints and your cartilage, help with musculature and bone density. So do some resistance training, take the collagen, and improve your health. This stacks well with the vitamin C and magnesium, and drinking filtered water, about 32 to 64 ounces of filtered water with the vitamin C and the collagen will cross-link and help with your skin, to help with the dermal layer of your skin. This stacks well with C60 to help with skin health. So please go to my store and get the collagen. All right, we're going to listen to Peter Ducey talking about Trump's Asia tour.
From my fingertips, all possibility unfolds. It's all connected. Possibility.
We are starting our final hour with a Fox News alert. President Trump meeting with Japan's emperor earlier this morning after arriving in Tokyo.
It's a second stop on Trump's Asia trip as he gets ready to meet with China's Xi Jinping later this week.
Senior White House correspondent Peter Ducey going to decide from Tokyo with the latest. Peter.
Good morning. Yes, President Trump was very warmly greeted by Japan's imperial leader, the emperor, shortly after touching down here in Asia, or rather here in Japan, from his first stop in Asia, in Malaysia. And the president here in Tokyo has a long list of economic and security priorities that he wants to try to address. All of Asia will be watching his every move, but in many ways, an audience of one is the most important. The one the president is going to meet with in South Korea this week, China's Xi.
We're going to have a great talk. I have a lot of respect for President Xi. I like him a lot. He likes me a lot, I believe, and respects me, and I think he respects our country a lot. And I think we're going to have a successful transaction for both countries.
One transaction that's possible, the sale of TikTok from China to a group of American investors. President Trump says he may sign that deal with Xi this week. Then, according to the Treasury Secretary who is traveling with the president, the DC and Beijing-based negotiators just need to cross some T's and dot some I's on a significant trade deal.
I believe we've reached a very substantial framework that will avoid that and allow us to discuss many other things with the Chinese. I think we will be able to discuss them helping us get this terrible fentanyl crisis under control. I think we are going to be able to discuss substantial soybean and ag purchases for our American farmers.
After a long flight to Kuala Lumpur this weekend, President Trump felt like dancing to the music played for him at an arrival ceremony. And this is why he said just leaving Malaysia, a great and very vibrant country, signed major trade and rare earth deals, and yesterday, most importantly, signed the peace treaty between Thailand and Cambodia. No war. Millions of lives saved. Such an honor to have gotten this done. tomorrow, the president's gonna meet for the first time with the drum-playing, former TV show hosting Japanese Prime Minister. Local reports are that she's gonna gift him a golf club used by the late Shinzo Abe and a gold leaf golf ball. And this all adds to a very exciting week here in Japan, where millions of people have been waking up early to watch Shohei Ohtani, Japan's own Shohei Ohtani, in the World Series games before school and before work. So there's a lot going on here in Tokyo. Back to you guys.
Absolutely. It seems like they're establishing good relations. Peter, in terms of who's with the president, is it true that Secretary of State Marco Rubio still can't get into China because I think they banned him?
It seems like there is some complication with his travel, but that is something that President Trump would be able to work out at the leader level with Xi. And it seems like for this trip, the key point people are, it's not going to be Secretary Rubio, who is, of course, the top diplomat for the country, but it is Jamieson Greer, the trade representative, and Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, because those are the ones who have been working their counterparts for days with intense final negotiations ahead of the leader level meeting. As we understand it, they would not, President Trump and Xi would not be having this meeting this week in South Korea if the lower level negotiators, the cabinet level negotiators, were not really, really close to a deal that would level the playing field for the economy. Basically, if President Trump is convinced, can be convinced, that Xi and China are going to stop ripping the U.S. off, among others elsewhere in the world economy as well, but especially the U.S. If they were not really, really close to a good deal for the U.S., President Trump would be going home.
You know, Peter, when we play that video of President Trump dancing as he was greeted in Malaysia, we had this video. We were talking about this over the weekend when he touched down. It struck me as such a contrast. If you remember back under the Biden administration, when President Biden had some musicians there on the White House back in 2024, and he just was frozen. Such a contrast. It's very different than this president. What do you make of just how different of a president he is? What's better?
I can't believe I had to come all the way to Tokyo before the idea of a Trump and Joe Biden dance-off was ever presented. It's always possible. No, it's President Trump. You can tell that he feels really loose right now. He feels like he has the wind at his back, ending global conflicts, nearing trade deals that are going to be really helpful to the United States, and meeting a prime minister here who is really good friends, or who was an admirer and a political ally of his really good friend, Shinzo Abe. So President Trump is having a great time. I'm sure that he's pretty jet lagged, but he feels like he has the wind at his back. When we came here with Joe Biden, things were usually a little bit more tense. The U.S., the world was coming out of this global pandemic. He was trying to repair alliances that he thought needed repairing. And I'm having this thought now, coming to this conclusion for the first time. Joe Biden went around the world thinking that he needed to repair alliances that were damaged by Donald Trump. That would appear to be in conflict with a president who can land pretty much anywhere in the world and just start dancing. Right. Thanks, Peter. We can come here to Tokyo and have Tokyo Tower lit up in red, white, and blue. So
yeah.
Thank you so much, Peter.
So China, by the way, is saying the same things that we are about and optimistic about doing a deal. Their vice commissioner minister, who's the one that Scott Bessett's dealing with, he said the two sides have
come on, spit it out.
They've recorded, they've gotten over some their preliminary, they have reached a preliminary consensus on the deal. And one of the things they have done, I think, is got leverage. The president got a deal with Thailand on processing rare earth. He got a deal with Malaysia on getting
I'd be shocked if there is a concrete agreement coming out of China. It's going to be, we agree to the principles. We need to talk about it, in another session. That's what's going to come out of this.
And he got a deal with $13 billion from Australia to get rare earth processing done, which has also included something with Cambodia. So immediately the president created leverage. I'll go somewhere up for rare earth if I have to.
Another peace deal for Donald Trump.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee Metheny on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.
All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the ashwagandha root. This helps to control your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels. Brings down inflammation. Super important for your immune system and your cardiovascular system and brain function. Turmeric. Turmeric will soak up free radicals, bring down inflammation. Again, important for your immune system, cardiovascular system, and brain function. Because when you're bringing down inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque. If you're bringing down inflammation at the cerebral level, you're reducing stress on your neuron. Lignans. Lignans will help with your immune system, your endocrine system, soak up free radicals and bring down inflammation. Helps with, obviously, your cardiovascular health and brain function too. Stack these together, the lignans, the ashwagandha root, and the turmeric, and that's a powerful stack to boost up your immune system, help with brain function, and help reduce plaque formation. Please go to my store, get this stack. This is a very powerful stack to slow down the aging process, but also to prepare you for the fall and the winter season. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, get $5 off when you order. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. And don't be a crazy liberal.